team. With Shannon and Sean talking about life and everything in between. The token ones see it differently. Yeah, token one for the team. This is Shannon and Sean keeping things light. The token ones in the group. That's right. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride right now. Right now. And enjoy the ride right now.
I could have worn my company logo, which is just me. I was going to say. So you come here every Monday and do this?
Every second.
Every second is Monday. Okay.
Yeah, every second.
And you've been enjoying it?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't do it anymore if you didn't enjoy it, would you?
No, well,
We kind of made a pact that if we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't do it.
yeah, that was it. It was just like when it stops being fun,
Yeah.
We'll stop
we'll
it.
stop it.
Yeah.
And it's not been fun.
Right.
There's been one or so episodes I came out, I feel tired.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just whatever you've got on during the day. We're going, so we are recording now,
Yeah.
Mr. Sid. Now, I've always struggled with your last name.
Me too.
Is it Sid Ozolade?
That's correct, yes.
Yay.
Zero struggle there, I would say.
No, I had to, it was a tip of my tongue.
You have to work on it, and people who are really slick when they're doing live performance, professional MC will come up and say, "Excuse me, Sid, how do you pronounce your second name?" And I say, "You pronounce it Ozolid." And the ones that are less professional just
go for it.
on and make stuff up.
Yeah.
What's the worst like kind of introduction you've had with your last name? Has anyone ever messed up so badly?
No, I like omelette, but I just think that's a joke. Omelette, a better class of yolk. So, no, usually it's Ozalid. Ozalid.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Ozalid. And I just go on and say, wrong.
Try again.
I don't think anybody can actually ever remember the second name, but they know it's the guy with a funny second name, so that works.
Yeah.
So, and when you go,
And as I was saying, I never MC'd for you.
no, thank goodness, but I MC'd for you once,
Yes, you did.
and you were telling me that you were coloured, and I didn't realise that. So remember that? I didn't realise that. I have a history of not knowing people have got ethnic backgrounds, because you sound Scottish and you look Scottish.
Yeah.
So to me, you're a Scottish guy.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a coloured line. I go, colour? What are you talking about? And then I thought, maybe he is. So then I thought, maybe I better watch because he's got a Scottish name. I better ask, how do you pronounce his name? It might be pronounced a different way.
Yeah.
So I come up and said, excuse me, how do you pronounce your first name?
Yeah.
And you said, you pronounce my first name Shianio. And I went, what? Okay, so I was practicing all the time for when you're about to come on. And just before you came on, you come up and say, actually, it's just Sean. And I went, oh, okay. So you double bluffed me.
Yeah.
One, I thought I was convinced that you were just white like me.
Yeah.
And then I thought your name was Shianio.
Gianni.
This is Mr. DeCanio, that was me.
So easy to make fun of me, isn't it?
Not at all. It's so easy to have fun with you, Sid.
Oh, there you go.
Slick.
Absolutely. I
Time
think
to go now.
Yeah, well, that's
Do you
your,
feel like that's your
that's your
hour and a half
compliment.
done?
That's it done.
Give
Sorry.
me a compliment.
Correct. No, I think we did a poetry thing together.
Oh, we did, yes. That's right. You came along and weren't very funny. Well, actually,
Yes.
that's not true. You were funny, but to the wrong audience.
Oh, yeah,
You were very. I was very giggly.
Yeah.
And you really had lived a lot to make fun of. I'd made fun of me, actually.
I
That's
did,
what
yeah.
It was really,
And the
really
first time
funny.
you met him?
No, we did a few gigs before.
Okay.
It was really, really funny, but it was to a poetry gig. It was a spoken word, is what it's called nowadays.
Yeah,
At Spin.
yeah. Spin,
So
yeah.
people
Spin,
go up
yeah.
and do things about death and blah, 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 and broken up lives and how their parents have just ruined everything. And then they put me on. They usually put me on now at the very end of the first half because nobody wants to go on after me and it lightens the mood. But they put you on after me, I think.
Yeah.
And the audience were kind of a bit like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah.
And you're doing comedy. And actually, it was very funny, but it was just to the wrong people.
Yeah, and that's I told you before, it's my favourite gigs.
But you were making fun of me because you believe I have so many children. That's what it was.
Well, I refer to it as the Genghis Khan of comedy poetry. And everybody was like, you can't say that about it. 'Cause, I mean, in the poetry world,
Beloved.
Sid's on the throne. He is the man.
Yeah, I'm on the toilet all the time.
On the toilet, that's the hemorrhoids. But
Yeah.
but we had talked about it, and then I came off, and there's a woman got chased by a seagull. I remember talking about that. And she,
inside the venue.
Inside
There's a seagull in the venue.
and I
got
came
chased by a
off.
seagull.
I came off, and I was yapping to her. She goes, "I could have listened to you for ages." I said, "How come you?"
Oh,
Oh, thank goodness it's not
there you
recording.
go.
I said, how come you didn't laugh through the whole thing? She's like, "Oh, I don't know. I just laughed on the inside. I thought that's the strangest way.
Project your
that
laughter.
happens a lot. I'm not sure who I spoke to about that recently because somebody was saying, "Oh, people didn't laugh," and I said, "But they were really smiley,
Yeah.
so they're all laughing
Yeah.
inside."
Yeah,
and sometimes that's what happens. So I learned a long time ago just look at the faces,
And if they're smiling, it's
and if
fine.
a smiley face, cool.
Go with that.
So my elder brother, because believe it or not, there's not four of me, but four brothers, and the oldest one's really old, and he's very grumpy, and he stays in Edinburgh, and he says I'm the unfunniest person he's ever seen. But one of his lady friends made him come to my gig at the Fringe,
Yeah.
and he's like, and he's just. And but I watched his face, and he smiled all the way through.
Nice.
You're like you like
He
me.
was really smiley,
Yeah.
and at the end he says, "Oh, do you want a drink?" And I said, "Oh, that'd be very kind." He goes, "Well, you're a shite." And I said, "Well, I saw you smiling all the way through." So that's the thing to do, is not to worry about the laughter, but
Yeah.
look for the smiley face, because
Absolutely.
they're smiling
Good tip.
inside.
Yeah, because of course the big thing is you're on your 46th year
On this planet, or just
on your
That's true.
yeah.
46
Your career.
years of performing.
Yeah.
Performing,
Poetry.
yeah. And we had Scott G on here, and he had confessed. He said it was you that got him on stage, and he says like, "Come back with your own material, you moron."
I didn't say it. Didn't
No,
call him
you
moron.
didn't say. But he said he had potential, and he said, come. He says, write someone down, come back, and he says if it wasn't for you, he would not kind of been on that trajectory. For
That's
for
true. That's
stand-up.
why he still sends me money. If he
Commission.
does, I get 10%.
10%.
So,
You should maybe up that to 15.
Yes.
But no,
I wish I cashed in when he was working in the porn industry in Los Angeles, but I couldn't travel across to get my 10%. I'm coming. Oh,
it's
too
only
late
on.
now.
It's only on.
Now, said, I'm self note. Do not swear on this podcast.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because
But I haven't sworn really.
No,
I slight swear, but that was because Uncle David, as he's called, which is my elder brother, that was his language that he used. He said I was shite.
oh, very good.
It's a direct quote.
That's a direct quote. Yes,
Yeah.
that's okay.
different.
Direct
No, Scott was a young man, and I think it would be the mid to late 90s when I was running the Laughing Carrot Comedy Club in Aberdeen,
Yeah.
and the Laughing Carrot Comedy Club in Dundee.
Oh,
I-
right, wow,
I had
you
two
know
of them.
those. Wow.
And Scott, I don't know, he just turned up one day and wanted to do stuff, and at that time I would have like a main act which would come from somewhere. Usually Scotland, but not always. And then a couple of sort of intermediate acts and open spots at the beginning for anybody who wanted to try stuff out. So Scott came and did some of the open spots and then built himself up to be one of the middle acts. But he wasn't good enough to be the headliner at that time. He is now, of course.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
So,
yeah.
but you don't, when you give people those opportunities, you don't realise what impact it has on them.
Yeah.
It's not till years later when you see them again that they say, "Oh, you did all this," and you go, "I didn't actually do any of that. You did all that.
Yeah.
I just enabled you to
facilitated
do that."
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Facilitated that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you think 46 years of
Advertising.
Kirkland.
Yeah.
I didn't say it.
Costco.
We're sponsored by Costco.
Yeah, but everyone
but-
we've had
yeah,
has said
Everything.
Sid consistently comes up in our podcast. So of course,
Are they mentally ill?
Some. Yeah.
some maybe no. So we thought we should have you on.
I wonder why they say that. I don't know why.
I think because you're
Corridors. I think you meant in corridors, perhaps. But, it was one of the things I thought that enablement is how many people you've got your own legacy that you've built over the years, but the enablement as well of getting people into comedy, like even like stand up. So the question I was going to ask, I really wanted to ask you was,
Well, you have questions. Don't
oh,
you?
I
wasn't sure.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Well, that's
Shannon's,
what those laptops for.
Yeah.
Right.
Shannon's the questionnaire. She always
Being a bit older, I imagined like a bit of paper with some questions on it. But you've actually, your young team who've got laptops.
Dear
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
Sid,
yeah.
my mum said to come down today. That's how I read it. But no,
Right, carry on. Hit me with a question.
So
I like this legacy bit.
did you do stand up first, or was it poetry first? What was your first kind of base of spoken word?
Okay, so the real answer is I did stand-up poetry.
Okay.
I did both.
Nice.
So what I
Dual.
did was in 1978, I realised that I didn't want to do amateur dramatics because there was ladies there, slightly older ladies,
Right.
and they were making lots of advances. So I didn't realise that.
Lots of advances.
I used to do a thing called children's theatre. when I was at school, and I went from Children's Theatre, which was in Aberdeen in King Street.
Okay.
And I lived for Children's Theatre because I could get to be creative and be me. And I went there, and I couldn't really speak very well, and I was very bad coordination, and very, very shy. And they kind of taught me a bunch of skills to be able to communicate and come out of myself, and they let me be creative. So I was really, really bad at school with my dyslexia, which at that time wasn't called dyslexia. This is my joke. It's called thickashitsia.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't recognised. So I was just in all the bottom classes, and it was just horrible. So Saturdays I go, Children's Theatre. I can do things. I can express myself. Yeah. And I learned how to speak better. And I learned how to speak better. Grammar wasn't any better, but my speaking was better. And I did all that stuff, and I could be creative. Then I had to leave school, and it stopped. So I did some amateur dramatics, and I took part in Grease, which was the Scottish premiere of Grease the musical. I was in that.
Oh, right.
And but then I realised that a lot of people who went to amateur dramatics, who were obviously older than me because they were old people like in their 30s or even 40s. A lot of little affairs were going on. And at that time, I really had striking good looks and lots of hair. And these middle-aged ladies kept hitting on me, and I was really very, very shy and very scared and ran away. And I thought, no, I'm not doing amateur dramatics anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make up my own character, and I'm going to go out and do my own thing. So I based it on some people that I really liked, like Wildman Fisher, who I don't expect you to know.
No.
And Harpo Marx, who I do expect you to know. And the man who used to sing Mule Train and hit himself in the head with a tray. So I thought, I'm going to hit myself in the head with a tray. And I'm going to create my own poems.
Wow.
So I actually just created my own material, but there was nowhere to perform.
Okay.
There was no comedy clubs, especially in Aberdeen, unless you wanted to play in a working men's club, which I didn't want to do.
No.
And there was no poetry stuff unless you wanted to go to the art gallery, or maybe the library with a bunch of old ladies and talk about the heather and salmons and stuff. And it's like, ugh. Yeah. So I went and performed at gigs. There was a whole bunch of sort of punk gigs, and I used to go perform at those punk gigs. So that's where I first started. So I wouldn't say it was spoken word or poetry or comedy. It was just me being this unusual character in between bands. So you'd have the support band on, then you'd have me going, well, it's me. And I'd be doing my poetry, and I'd dance around, and I'd say silly jokes. And then you had the main act on after that. And probably for about 4 or 5 years, that's what I did, and built myself up, going on the circuits around Scotland and then down to England. Yeah. And played with some quite big bands and stuff, because that's where the market was.
Yeah. Right.
And the other part of the market was students' unions, of course, because there was young people who wanted stuff that the parents didn't want, which they were all the working men's clubs telling bad jokes about. Let's see how you think nowadays. It's called racist. Yeah. It's called sexist. Yeah. And homophobic. Yeah. And I just thought it was horrible stuff. Yeah. So the students' unions, virtually every university had a students' union. And people couldn't stay at home to watch stuff because there only was 3 or 4 channels, and your parents watched it, and it was not pretty boring. So if you wanted something, you had to go out. Yeah. So I used to play a lot of students' unions in colleges and universities around Britain.
So how old were you around about this time?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I probably was about 36 at the time. Yeah. So, no, I would probably be 19, I think.
19,
okay. Yeah. And what was it like, to like circle back to kind of like the punk scene, what was it like being the person that was different to kind of like the bands and the supports going on, and doing kind of like a whole new thing in the arena? Were you pretty accepted by them, or did they just kind of shy you away?
No. People, so number one, I was a punk. Yeah. And number two, I wasn't doing anything that was punk. I was completely the opposite of punk. I was just doing very, very crazy, surreal stuff. But I was very physical. And I was probably more extreme than the punks were. So the punks absolutely loved me, and a phenomenal following. And people would just go absolutely crazy for me. So I could play in front of 400 or 500 people, and there'd all be these crazy people at the front with the studs on the head and all that kind of stuff going, why? And I'd just be more crazy than they would be. So they really, really got into it. But of course, that era finished. Yeah, of course. And then you're going, wah! And we're like, no.
It's changed.
So so things just keep evolving. And I remember doing a thing in Dundee at Art College. I'd done something in Edinburgh, which was called the Electric Temple, and it was just full of all these people doing unusual acts. And I did something there, and again, it was just, I used to get unbelievable responses when it was young people and young punks, because it was so extreme at that time. And I did a thing there, and someone said, oh, come and do this thing at Dundee at the Art College. It's a Dada event, which is fine, because I was really into Dadaism anyway, so I understood that. I had books about being Dada, and I knew about surrealism, so away I went. And people came on. The guy came on in the white kind of boiler suit, and haversack, and he took the haversack out, and he had a typewriter, and he had a fish wrapped up in a newspaper, and he put the fish into the typewriter and typed and that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of acts that they were doing, and be very arty. And then all these bikers turned up, and they actually beat up the acts.
Jeez.
So they were beating up the acts, and there was a band on before me, and the band before me got beaten up. So, at that time, I used to wear lots of different layers of clothes and a kilt and different things. And as I was doing my different poems, leaping around, I would take different layers off.
Yeah.
And it just get more and more bizarre. And I had these inflatable legs, and I had a suitcase full of toys that I would take out, and they were called my all-stars. And I would introduce them. Here's Doug Tatties, and here's so-and-so, and blah, blah, blah. And they come up and say, look, we're just going to give you the money. You don't have to perform, go away. I said, no, I've come all the way down here. I'm going to perform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're right. But they're beating everybody up. So I went on, and these crazy bikers just absolutely loved what I was doing.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was more extreme and more crazier than they were.
Yeah.
So the answer to the question was, how did I fit in with the punks? They just loved it at the time.
Yeah.
But when the punk thing died out, then of course they didn't love. Well, there's no one there to love me. I was unloved.
Oh.
Well, things just kept changing and evolving.
Yeah, yeah. So. I mean, of course, as the years go on, your act changes and evolves with it.
Does it?
Well, there's versions of it.
There's versions of it.
Yeah, there's versions of it.
It does. It changes. Yes.
And what I wanted to ask was, and we could touch upon, and we don't have to talk about it, of course. Obviously, you suffered a brain injury later in your life.
Yep. Actually, quite recently in my life.
Well.
But yeah, as I was older, yes.
Yeah, as you're a wee bit older, and what I was going, because I only met you maybe
2 years ago.
2 years ago, something like that.
You still was handsome, and I'm glad to say you've trimmed your hair a little bit too, and your beard. It really sets you off nicely.
Yeah, well, there's these women at this dramatic school that I go to that are
amateur dramatics.
Called Mr. Dunn.
That's it, Mr. Dunn. Let's give it back.
Teach you all the words to Greece.
Oh well.
Before John Travolta even read the script.
Well, you should be the man.
No, I couldn't.
What I would ask
anyway,
was, the parallels between, the parallels between your comedy just before your brain injury. Were you doing your poetry comedy before your brain injury?
Yeah.
That recently?
Yes, I was doing some. I actually stayed in Borneo, and I was doing it there.
Oh my gosh.
So.
And then obviously you had to recover, etc. If you were to compare your stuff now to then, is there a big change in it, or are even your thought processes to think of new material?
Yeah. So there's two questions there. One is there a big change in the content?
Yeah.
And the other question is the thought processes.
Yeah.
So I'll answer the thought processes first because that's the easiest to answer. Okay. There's a massive difference in the thought processes. Mm-hmm. So I had to relearn how to do everything.
Yeah.
Not just my comedy, but everything in life.
Yeah.
So how am I going to drive a car? How am I going to put my socks on? How am I going to answer the phone? How am I going to pay a bill? How am I going to cook food? How am I going to remember where I meant to go? Who's this person? Oh, hello, Mum. Thanks for wearing a badge. Yeah. So everything I had to relearn how to do stuff.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to work out that by letting go of how I used to do things was the answer.
Right.
Because you'd always try and do things the way you'd always done it, and my life just kept failing and failing and failing. I couldn't do stuff.
Yeah.
So and it'd get me at times quite upset.
Yeah.
And I'd miss appointments and not know what was going on. And so I had to work out. I need to learn new ways of doing things. Sure. So I had to learn a new way of writing material. And I actually went to visit a man called Fred Wilkinson, who happens to be a bit younger than me, but he's still an old man, and he's the main guy in Toxic Effects, who are a punk band,
right?
Who've been on the go for a few years less than me. And I was round at his house not long after. We had to come back to Scotland because of the brain injury to try and get some rehab and stuff. And I was round at his, and he said, "Oh, I've got this tune you can have, Sid." He said, "It's a soul tune," which it wasn't. But anyway, he said, "It's a soul tune, and I wrote it for blah, 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 and he hasn't used it. Take this away and make up a song." And I said, "Oh, won't this guy be upset?" And he goes, "No, he died." Which is
you can inherit it.
Which is a bit of a recurring theme in my comeback. So my agent is dead, my manager is dead, and everyone I've worked with is kind of dead. So I took this tune home, and I thought, I'll make me up. But it just took me a long, long time. So I had to learn a new way of making stuff up. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I can do this. And I thought, right, so this is what I have to do. I have to just do things in little bits. Mm-hmm. I used to have ideas very, very quickly, and I'd produce stuff almost instantly. And it was almost as if my brain was just like constantly going. And it was so easy to just create stuff. And it was like, now I've got to sit down and say, I've got an idea. I'm going to work my way through this. I'm going to put it together. And it's got faster as I've developed new ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the answer. I've just had to learn how to redo stuff.
Yeah.
But also, as part of my recovery, is I will learn how to redo stuff.
Oh, okay.
Another thing I learned when I was in Borneo, lying in a hospital bed or lying in a bed at home and not being able to communicate with people and what have you, I recognized I had lots of funny ideas. So they would say things to me and I would take it in and I would process. It took me a long time to process and a long, long time to answer.
Yeah.
But actually, I'd have lots of really funny ideas. And I thought, the funny idea bit
It's still there.
It's still there. So I'm going to use that to help me get better. So one of the reasons why I do so many things now is to actually dip into that bit, which is kind of the essence of me, and say, that's the bit that's going to help me get better.
Yeah.
So because of that, and I've also got to say, I'm going to write something, I'm going to make myself create new stuff. Because it'd be easy. I had to go back and relearn all my own poems and songs. But because I've published books and I've got records of stuff and I've got videos, I could go and learn it from that. Whereas before I used to know it all.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I can't just use all the old stuff. I have to learn how to create new things. That's part of the recovery, is to be creative. The other part is to memorize stuff. And the other part is to go and deliver it. And I see it as being 3 separate bits, which I have to make myself do. And each bit helps me get better.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used to do it when I used to walk up and down the hill to school to pick up my kids. I would practice and practice and practice and practice in my own head. So I would practice for sometimes,
Hours a day.
actually 2 weeks just to go and do 2 poems at a gig at whatever.
Yeah.
And then the audience didn't know what I was doing was using that as therapy, and I was going to learn this. And the challenge was do it without a bit of paper, do it from memory. And to them, it's just some crazy old man doing stuff for 10 minutes. But to me, it's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
I made up 2 things and I memorized them and now I delivered it.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to the second part of your question. And the first part of the question was, Mr. Presenter.
It was the change of your material.
So I knew that. I just wanted to double bluff and make sure that he was paying attention.
Well, my list today was to remember my questions.
So I think that the essence of it, Bauhaus, that's cool. When I was in Berlin, I went to the Bauhaus Museum and it was closed.
Oh.
That wasn't the only reason I was there though, but my wife was amazed that I had any interest in Bauhaus. But Bauhaus as in the art movement which is what that is, rather than the band that people think of nowadays, or thought of in the 90s, I guess. You might not even know about that.
No, I was 91.
So anyway, the question, the essence is exactly the same. I mean, it's probably not as silly and not as surreal. So when I go back and look at some of the older stuff I've got, it really is quite out there.
Do you look back and envy with it, or
No, not at all. No.
Do you look back and go, it was of the time?
I just think, thank goodness I'm not doing that anymore. It was very much of the time, and also I was being quite provocative. I mean, I would go to gigs and just do the most surreal thing I could possibly do.
Yeah.
But when you're young, you're anti-society. So I was a punk, but I would never ever swear on stage. I didn't swear on stage until I actually came back to the UK 6 years ago and realised everybody swore, even everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I'd never sworn on stage, ever. And I would just go and do very simplistic, surreal stuff about animals and what have you.
Yeah.
And you'd have all these punks doing all this aggressive stuff, and I was the opposite. And I used to do it on purpose. I would really push the envelope by just being very, very silly.
But was that a way of like finding yourself and finding your act by kind of pushing the boundaries as far as you could go?
It was
fun?
my act. It was just my way of saying, F you, society.
Got you.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, I was on TV and stuff, and people wrote in and complained, and went, this guy's just crazy, you shouldn't have this on TV, and blah, blah, blah. And it won the letter of the week in the Evening Express.
Nice.
This man is an embarrassment to Aberdeen. We must have much, much better people than this.
Wow.
This is what an embarrassment this man is. And the answer was, no, you don't actually have better, because 500 people turned up for the audition, and they picked me. But I was doing something about an invisible lady, Mrs. Polythene, the incredible invisible lady. And people just couldn't handle that, because they wanted the sexist stuff and the racist stuff and the homophobic stuff.
Yeah.
And the BBC said, hey, if you do some of this stuff, we can give you more work because we really like you.
And you went, no.
And I said, well, I'm not doing that stuff. Yeah. I came up with one joke, which was my mother-in-law is so fat, she has to wear really big clothes, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But all I was really doing was taking the piss out of them.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, hey. And they went, no, you can't do that. That's just stupid. It was just so, it was me just being anti-society at the time, just being as surreal as I could be. And also my mind probably worked that way. It was a very simplistic mind. And it's probably, I must say it's become mature, but probably it's you evolve and change as a human being. So
I notice this about you straight away, is you're just a very kind man.
I am.
You're just kind to everybody about any situation. You're always you always project kindness to them.
I do.
And I guess that's a testament to you. You're offered an awful lot of work with a huge establishment being the BBC, and going, I'm going to stick to
What
I know
yeah.
and what I like.
Well, you got to be yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be yourself.
Yeah. Very authentic at all times.
You've got to be yourself. I can't do that stuff. And that involves acting and being good. But I'm actually quite good at being me. Yeah.
I'll
being
stick
me
to being myself.
is really easy. And I did do stuff on ITV down in Manchester and stuff. And I did lots of other little bits. But
you had a radio show at one point.
I had a radio show. Yeah, I had a radio show at Northsound when Northsound covered Aberdeen and part of Grampian.
Yeah.
For about 5 years, I had a show once a week. So it was in the 90s, I think. I'm not quite sure. Probably from late 80s to mid 90s.
Wow.
So once a week, and I had an hour of just craziness and with different characters I made up.
Yeah.
I used to sing my own jingles and stuff, and we had a different theme every week. I had a different theme, so the characters would make jokes about that theme, but in their own character.
Yeah, so it was never actually you. It was
Well, I was, so there's always two presenters. So there's always me as Sid doing whatever the outside of it, Sid's sandwich of the week. So if the theme was like the sea, I would eat seaweed in a sandwich live on air, which was silly because I could have pretended, but I never did because I wanted it to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I had different.
I'm a slave to the art.
Yes. So we had different things I did live in the studio, and I sang all the jingles live, and then all the records that we played would be connected to the theme, and the different characters would be whoever they were, and that would be related to the theme. So we did that for 5 years, but that was a way of me being creative and delivering and doing my stuff. And then we did it when Lemon Tree opened up in Aberdeen, in I think 93 or something. They asked me, because I was like the hit show where young people, I got more fan mail than anybody else in the radio station, which really annoyed the DJs who were on prime time, like Robin Galloway and stuff, because he was a big star.
Yeah.
But all the young kids were, Sid, he's crazy, let's write into him. It wasn't the best show, but I was just, young people just enjoyed me.
Yeah.
So because of that, the Lemon Tree gave me a commission to put a show on at the Lemon Tree in the theatre. So I was the first person to perform in the theatre and be commissioned. So I got paid lots of money to take the radio show and put it on stage.
Yeah.
So then I used puppets and actors and different things to create the characters, because there was two of us doing it. There was three of us doing the radio show, but then it was like, we can't play all the characters, so we had puppets and different things. So that was cool.
Is there any? Is there a record of it or nothing? Is there any recordings of it?
I think I might have. Oh yes, it is. There's something. Part of it's on YouTube. There is. I think it could be. Is it Salvador Dali's hat? There is something.
Okay.
There is something on YouTube.
Because honestly, that would be a breakfast morning show.
Maybe it's Salvador Dali's, but there's something that we're doing. I can definitely see it in my own mind.
Yeah,
something on YouTube in there. Yeah, I've got little bits on YouTube, but of course people just watch what comes up. Well, people watch YouTube less and less. They all go to TikTok now.
Yeah,
because at one time it'd be like, you got 1,000 views on YouTube. Now it's like, you've got 5 views on YouTube. Yeah. So,
would you ever go back to radio? Think you'd do it again?
Not really. No, I'm not. I think it depends. It depends what it was. I was on the radio a lot. 11, 12 years ago, I had a book out called Mr. Elastic Brain, which was at that time it was a book. It was the story of my life as Sid, and then a whole bunch of poems, and that came out. And I was on Radio Scotland once a week for about a year and a half.
Yes.
On the Tom Morton show. So Tom Morton is another old man who happened to be in the radio, and he was on in the afternoons, I think 3 till 5 or something like that. And at the time I was staying in Amsterdam, but they used to fly me across once a week, and I would come here and I'd do a slot with him. And then we did a Christmas show together, and we did Children in Need and stuff. And I enjoyed that, but that was me doing a poem and chatting about different subjects and mucking about. And what was nice about the book was I was in the Amazon top 10 for poetry for about 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe not quite 6 months, but almost 6 months. And at that time I'd fly across to London and do gigs in London, poetry gigs in London, and you see the book going back up the charts because people would go out and buy it. Or if I was on the radio once a week, if I go on the Friday, it would go up the chart again the following day because people would think, it's that guy, and go and buy the book. Yeah. So you see it go up and down like that, which is nice, and but never got to number 1 a number one. It took me a lot. I got number 2 a lot.
Okay.
Never got number 1. Then I worked out it was always a dead poet.
As I
got
say,
to
you
number
need to die.
Yeah,
first.
so now when I do gigs,
The
if I have
Dead
the book,
Poets
I show
Society.
the book and I say, please only buy this when I die.
Yeah,
So
because
rush
then I
out
want to
and buy
be
it.
right on the top of the
And then
charts.
that'll get me up there. Something going wrong technically or changing.
Yeah.
It's just it's a new camera.
We will
that I've
pause
used.
this.
Yeah, we'll pause it.
We're going again.
And we're back. We are
Fantastic.
back.
Sorry about that.
It doesn't go without one episode with a technical hitch.
That's the way it goes.
I get everything like, yeah, that's working, this is going. Yep,
You were very
happy
excited
days.
about your new camera as well.
I was, yeah, and it just.
Well, this is what reminds me of when I used to do my radio show, which was all live. Mm-hmm. Because if something went down,
That's it.
that was it.
That's
live.
it.
Yeah. But we were talking about your radio show and if you
Mm-hmm.
would go back to radios where we got to. But did you find kind of like the live show at the Lemon Tree a bit more you and like your personality and things, or did you prefer to do the radio? Like, how did you find it?
No, I found it by getting the bus. No, it was just me because it's always just me. You
Yeah.
know, but it was a double act. I used to do my radio show. I did a radio show with different people. First of all, I did it with a man called Mark Finlay, who's now head of music for virtually all the independent radio stations in the world.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And he used to drive the desk, as it was called. So all the technical stuff, there'd always be someone else there because they would do all the records and all the adverts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I would just have all the comedy nonsense
Material,
made up.
yeah.
But then we would bounce off each other. And then Mark he moved to Radio 4th, I think it was. That was like a big deal to move down to Edinburgh and be Radio 4th
Yeah.
at the time.
Right.
And a guy called Dave McLeod, who I'd known, he came in and he did all the driving. So by the time we went to the Lemon Tree, Dave was kind of my double act on the radio. And you won't know his dad, but his dad was very famous because he was on a program called Pebble Mill at 1. And Pebble Mill at 1 was the first daytime television in the UK.
Oh my God.
Oh,
And
wow.
his dad was called Donnie B. McLeod, so he
Okay.
was quite famous at the time.
Right.
But unfortunately died young, and then Dave was doing the DJ stuff, and we buddied up. So we went to the Lemon Tree. Dave was actually a professional actor, and he then became the voice of Channel 4. So when Channel 4 started, the person who did all the commentary in between each programme was actually Dave,
Oh, wow.
who researched all the movies and all the programmes, and he would actually do a little intro for them all.
Oh my gosh.
He did that for about 20 or 30 years. So he and I, when we did the Lemon Tree, it was nice to work with a professional actor.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make up all this crazy stuff. And then he would go, okay, I've got to do what?
Yeah.
I say, well,
Yeah.
just
This is it.
So as you grab my nipples, right, I'll throw this water in your face. Say, oh, okay, then fine. How do you want them? How do you want them?
Clockwise,
grabbed, you know?
clockwise.
And he went one bit because he was at that time he was completely bald, and I was very very thin and had lots of hair, and he was small and fat and bald and a beard, and I was very tall and very thin and lots of hair and clean shaven, and we were saying we were twins during the show. And,
Like Danny DeVito
and
and
he was saying,
Arnold.
what are you doing with that silly hairpiece? And I what silly hairpiece? You haven't got a hairpiece. And it's glued on. And so he actually had to grab my hair and drag me around the stage to try and get this hairpiece off. So we had to rehearse it that he would hold my hair, I would hold his wrist, against me like
Yeah.
this. And then we would get, and we were like, oh, I can't believe it. And he'd drag me around. So it was that kind of stuff that we're doing.
Was it one night only? Do you have
No, we did a week. We did
A week,
Nice.
yeah.
and we did a
Got
couple of
commissioned for
shows.
a
I
week,
think the first one might have been called "Seeing is Believing" because that was one of the sort of little taglines we had in the radio. It's called Invisible Radio. Invisible Radio. Seeing is believing.
I can
And
hear
then-
that in your
and then
voice
we-
as well, yeah.
And then I think Life on a Stick was maybe the second show we did at the Lemon Tree because Life on a Stick was one of the little things I used to do as a jingle for some reason, and we had all these sticks at the back of the stage with different logos on them or different items on them, and people in the audience got to pick the order.
Yeah.
So we had
Oh,
different
okay.
scenes, but each stick had a different routine attached to it. So the audience would pick the stick, and they had hockey sticks and broomsticks and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they would say, that one there with Elvis on him. Okay, so we do whatever the Elvis sketch was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
It's a better way of like out of the hat.
yeah, it's
Yes.
So we did that, but it was always just my stuff. It was just me. I remember a joke about taking part in a 4x400 meter relay, a giraffe relay race. And I had to take part in this race against these giraffes. And I came second because I was beaten by a neck. So I used to have this is just really a big. So I used to create these things up. Say, Dave, we're doing this. We're doing what? And
Yeah.
I made this up. I mean, he was also very witty, so he would add things into it.
Yeah.
Nice.
But we did. I remember once there was some joke we did on the radio, and I told him the joke on the radio, and I'd lived it on stage with him at the Lemon Tree, and he just went, what are you talking about? So I had to run across the stage, whisper, oh yeah, and run back. So he wasn't, because he was an actor, he wasn't ready for ad-libs.
Yeah.
You know, so I would ad-lib to the audience and muck about with the audience, but when I suddenly realised
He was like,
ad-lib,
what?
and I actually ran the whole length of the stage and went, and I think the joke was, was it who was the first man to play, you might not get this because it's a dated joke again, but who was the first man to play trumpet on the moon? And the answer was Satchmo Armstrong, Satchmo was the trumpet player.
Okay.
He was also called Armstrong.
Yeah.
So, which is very funny in the 90s.
We're like, killed 30 years ago.
It did. But he was like, I ran across and told me, oh, that's really good, I remember that. And I ran back and did it, and he came up with the answer. And both were, oh. So, anyway, so it wasn't that different because it was just, the challenge was how do you put it on stage? And we started with shadows at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because it was invisible radio, seeing is believing, and the two of us were on stage in shadows.
Yeah.
And my shadow would go off one side, but I would come on stage the other side. And I remember my mother-in-law at the time just being baffled, how can you be in two places at once? And I had to say, well, actually, it's my voice, but it's someone else's shadow.
Yeah. Oh, got you there.
Yeah.
And then to kind of like touch on, to go back a little bit, what kind of inspired you to start writing poetry in the first instance? Or was it because of the amateur dramatics not being your thing anymore?
Not fulfilling.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to be molested by those ladies, but
Yeah.
I am now. And,
Sign me up next week. Yeah.
Come on, Doreen.
I'm ready now. So I didn't even like poetry.
Okay.
I have no interest in poetry
That's so
whatsoever.
fascinating.
I've become more interested in poetry, but I go to poetry gigs and I just sit there going, oh, this is just. Oh. And what I do now is I look at people and find something positive in them.
Okay.
Oh, really nice shoes, or really nice hair, or oh, really nice ditching, or whatever it is. I always find something positive about the performer.
Yeah.
I look really interested because otherwise, half the audience are like, oh, but it's so self-indulgent. And I go, I don't want to be that. So I find something positive. And sometimes there's some really good poetry. But what I did was I just wanted to create an opportunity to perform.
Okay.
And the Wildman Fisher thing, which you're now going to go and check up.
Yeah, of course.
And Harpo, who didn't speak, I liked all the physical stuff of Harpo. And the guy who did Mule Train with the tray. I just had these ideas of having very surreal lyrics and very physical kind of comedy and combined them. And I thought, well, so I'll just make up a poet. And I was actually a one-legged tap dancing poet to begin with. And I used to wear a kilt and have one leg tied up and hop around a lot. So I'd hop around for about 15 minutes and then think, God, this is killing my leg. so then I stopped tying it up and I'd dance around on one leg for a while, then go, da-da, two legs. So I just made up that genre, if you know what I mean. But then I got more into it. And I found rhyming works because I can remember things with rhyming. And now I have an interest in poetry because there's now a poetry scene. There's a thing called spoken word, which there wasn't years and years before. It just was, intellectuals doing some well-intended poetry somewhere, which was adults and grown-ups. And I was just a young, silly person.
I mean,
at that time I was.
Yeah, I mean, supposed to give you your flowers, Sid, you're kind of a trend, you're a bit of a trendsetter, trailblazer, a little bit, a big bit in the Aberdeen scene, because if you weren't doing what you were doing, somebody might have came along, but probably there wouldn't be as many Aberdeen comedians as there are.
I've got no idea because I just go home. I just do my gig and go home. And
for sure.
I speak to people and I'm polite because why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, of course.
I always find something positive to say to people because everybody else will tell them what's wrong. Everybody else will tell you what's wrong and everybody else will tell you how to improve.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I just say, that's really good. And I tell you.
Yeah.
Because it is. And that's what people need to hear. And then they build on that. And it's what it's done with good intent. But then I go home and I look after my kids and I look after my chickens and I
did see the chickens on TikTok. I love that.
I do whatever I've been doing. I dig my garden. Today I dug up some potatoes.
Nice.
Really? Do you see my tatties?
I didn't get to see your tatties today, but
I'm waiting for some of those old ladies from the
show them your tatties.
from the amateur. Hello, madam. Check my tatties. Although my carrots, they all got eaten by something. I don't know what.
Well, at least they're getting eaten. So, when you get to a certain age, carrots don't get eaten.
Got the whole lot were wiped out by some animal that broke in.
But if you looked at lineage or you looked at a family tree of local comedy,
yeah,
I mean,
there's links. I mean, you told me that people talk about it, and I'm not aware of that. You're not aware of
What you do, yeah.
You're not. I mean, I rate you very highly, or I wouldn't be in this room. But you don't know that because they don't run up and say, "Oh, this is really good." You don't know that.
Yeah.
So-
Exactly. Because even I remember when I first, one of my first gigs or second gig, where Peter Wood was there. And I said, I didn't know comedy existed. I didn't know what comedy or stand-up was. I didn't know Aberdeen had a comedy scene. I didn't know how to stand-up club. And he says, the Blue Lamps existed for years. And I went,
Didn't know that.
I didn't know that. And then I started looking into the Blue Lamp. And I thought, oh, right. And I didn't realise that Wendy Ivers, she was the one that kind of started Breakneck with Naz. And then before Breakneck, there was Wendy doing other things in Blue Lamp. And it just cascades all the way back. It's almost started with yourself going, I'm going to go and do something really funny and silly over here because there's nothing going.
Yeah. So people have told me that My Life in Carrot Comedy Club was the first comedy club. And it almost was, but there was some guys doing it before that.
Okay.
Trying to get things going. And then they thought, no, this isn't working.
Right.
And then another man called Paddy Burns picked it up. And he said, I'm going to cut this comedy club called Open Mic or something. I'm not sure what it was. And at that time, I'd done lots and lots of stuff. I've been doing it for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
And got a wee bit fed up. You get a bit fed up. I got fed up. I used to make lots of money out of it. And then things started changing and I got ripped off and I'd been on a tour with, I won't say who with, but anyway, been on a tour and stuff and didn't get paid and blah, blah. And
Right.
you've got family and all the rest of it. And you're thinking, this isn't very good.
Yeah.
And being someone who just likes to tell the truth and be honest, I'm thinking I'm not really hard enough for this. So I kind of shied away from it. And Paddy Burns said, I'm starting this comedy club. Will you come and be the MC? And I went, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And he hassled. And he said, can you just come for the first month and be the MC? And then I'll find somebody else. I said, okay, I'll do that for you because I know you. So I went in and did it. And then, okay, thank you. And it went well. And then, bye. And then next month, I don't have MD. Can you come down?
And you're like,
okay. So then I got back into it. It was only once a month. And then after about 6 months, he goes, this is too much work for me. You have it. So then I had it. And of course, it really took off.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was thinking about that today. I'm not sure why, but now you get comedians everywhere.
Yeah.
But then there wasn't lots of comedians.
Right.
There just wasn't people. So I had to really bring people up from, if I got people from Glasgow or Edinburgh, there'd be half a dozen at the most in each place.
Oh, wow.
And you would try and rotate them and find local people. And I remember Johnny Vegas came up. So Johnny Vegas, you know who Johnny Vegas is?
Yes, absolutely.
Got to check up. So before he became really famous,
Yeah.
he played my club for 50 pound.
Wow.
50 pound was quite a lot of money, but
Yeah.
not that much money. And I had to apologise to him and say, all I can pay for the headliner is 50 pound. And he was down in, it wasn't Leeds, it was close to Leeds. And I said, no, I want to come up. I want to come up and do this gig and blah, blah, blah. So, okay,
Wow,
fine.
nice.
And he came up and probably within a week or 2 weeks, he was all over the news. He was all over all the fancy magazines and everything on TV and blah, blah, blah. He just big explosion. And I thought, what a hoot. I had Johnny Vegas, who's now in my club last week for 50 pound. But what he did do was he drank lots of red wine and threw up a lot in the changing room. And he's going, oh, sorry, sir, it's so unprofessional. I'm going, it is very unprofessional.
But here's your £50.
People are finding you very, very funny. you know.
Yeah.
And maybe he had a little umbrella, folded up umbrella stuff, and I gave him a lift to his bed and breakfast or whatever.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, I'm so sorry, I was so sick, I shouldn't drink so much. Which you shouldn't. So,
No.
Yeah.
But people do.
Yeah.
So I didn't start it, but I had probably been doing it for about 25 years before that comedy thing happened.
Okay.
But that's when comedy clubs started to happen.
Yeah.
Because before that, there wasn't comedy clubs.
Yeah.
So early 80s, 90s.
Well, that would be in the 90s. That would be mid 90s, late 90s that I was doing that stuff, and that's when, because there'd been things like the comedy club down in Leicester Square in London, which I'd gone down to London quite a few times and played at comedy clubs in London. So there was a scene there, and it was just slowly spreading.
Yeah.
So I think probably Aid and Rick would have got that started in Raymond's Review Bar, which is a strip joint, and they would go on and do comedy. And
Come on.
as you do.
As you do.
So, well, that's been happening
That's
since
some
the windmill.
fusion there.
Yeah, that's been happening since the windmill from after the Second World War.
Yeah.
So a lot of the comedians that would be on TV when I was a boy had all gone and
Done that.
played at the windmill. At that time, the ladies had to stand still because it was art. They would stand still naked.
Right.
And then the lights would go off and they'd go away. And then the comedians would come on and get booed by men in raincoats.
Because they wanted the ladies out.
Because they wanted ladies.
Very Joan Rivers-esque.
So it kind of moved on. And my friend Sophie ended up being the stage manager at the Review Bar. And then Rick and Aid did the Dangerous Brothers, and they got into the Young Ones and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Alexi Sales was the compere there, and then they moved it to the Leicester Square at the comedy store.
Oh, yeah,
Then
yeah.
it just got bigger and bigger, and it started spreading. So that would probably be the 83, something like that.
Yeah.
So as I was doing crazy stuff here, they were doing crazy stuff down there.
Yeah,
But of course,
yeah.
they got onto TV.
Yeah, of
Or
course.
different kind of TV. Well, Channel 4 turned up, and Channel 4 wanted something different.
Well, Channel 4 was like the rebellious
It was,
station. This was all independent
It was.
stuff.
Yeah.
So they did very well because they got signed up by Channel 4 and BBC at the same time.
Oh, right.
Oh, wow.
Because they
Okay.
did the young ones on BBC, I think, and
Yeah.
The older-
Channel 4 were doing. I can't remember what they're called now. They did all these little movies and stuff that they used to do. I can't remember what they're called.
It's funny because at no time has it been easier to get your content out to people. This is the easiest time to get your content
Yeah.
out there, but it's probably the hardest time, I reckon,
Get it viewed.
to be viewed.
Yeah, that's true. It was very easy. Well, what was very easy? Yeah, it wasn't. There was less people doing it.
Yeah.
And what I was doing, nobody else was doing. Now everyone does it, which is fine. And some people do it much, much better than me, which is also
Okay.
good. And it's everywhere. And everybody can access it. But at that time, there wasn't many people doing what I was doing. But
Right.
nobody was doing what I was doing. They were
No.
doing. There was something close, but I was just very unique. And there was a kind of just one line. It was like, well, you go to newspapers, and these are the newspapers.
Yeah.
You go to your local paper and your local radio station and your local television company, and once you make it locally in your own region, then you can get onto national. And this is where you go to. That's Radio 1. That's where so I remember being invited to do a thing for Radio 1, and I was working, so I turned it down, which was silly. So if you're on Radio 1, everyone in the whole
Yeah,
country hears
see,
you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
If you go on BBC, everybody in the whole country sees you.
Yeah.
And they all watch it at night, and they all talk about it next day at work.
For sure.
And you're like,
You know?
no, I'm
And
actually,
there
I'm
only
actually
was
working.
one line, and so the amount of things I turned down because I thought I had to go to work. So
Got you.
so I got asked to go on a tour with the Specials because they performed in Aberdeen, and I was a support act.
Nice.
And Jenny Dammers and different folk in the Specials went, "Wow, this guy's crazy. Let's take him on tour." And they had like another 5 or 6 dates, and they were going to. And I said, "Oh, I've got work tomorrow.
Yeah.
I better go and be a good boy because I'm nice and I'm kind." And then it was about 30 years later, I thought, I could
should
have
have
phoned
done
up
that.
sick.
Yeah.
I could have phoned up sick. Oh, that's a bit silly. You know, I could have gone off and done that, but then it doesn't matter.
Lying in bed at night,
So there's lots of
like,
things I turned
yeah.
down at the time because I thought I can't do that.
I've got work. I've got responsibilities.
Yes, and but everything was very clear. If you're going to do it, you do it in that space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there wasn't many people doing it, so that's why I got into those spaces. But quite often I got opportunities and didn't take them. Probably lack of confidence at the time. I enjoyed having the fun,
Yep.
but to go and be with adults and be sensible was like, ooh, a bit scary.
Yeah, I hear you.
But you're right. Nowadays,
There's
you
no
can make-
real route map either.
Yeah, you can make. You can go through any medium.
Mm-hmm.
It's very scattered. Anybody can do it, which is lovely.
Yeah,
There's real
more
benefits.
access,
There's
yeah.
real benefits to that. There's also
Absolutely.
drawbacks to that.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons, and it is completely different. It's like when I was at the Fringe this year compared to 43 years ago when I first did it.
Yeah.
The whole thing's completely different.
Yeah.
But I had to go and experience it to find out how it was different and how I could do it better next year.
So the plan is next year?
The plan is to try and stay alive and go back next year. I have an ongoing plan and ongoing discussions with my doctor
Yeah.
about how I can stay alive. And the plan is to go and do a bit more next year.
Nice.
So I might, and also there's maybe a conversation about doing 2 shows a day, one being the family show and one being not an adult show, but a
Yeah.
more adult show.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you're the one of very few people that I've seen that can really kind of cater your fusion blend of comedy and poetry to not only adults but also children. And if you had to kind of pick one that you enjoyed the most, what
You
would
say
it
no
be?
to both and go to work.
Yeah.
Well, good thing is I can't work anymore because of the brain injury.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's
fair
perfect.
enough. Yeah.
So my days as Church of Scotland minister are now behind me.
I would love
So-
to see that.
It was good. I'm actually psychic as well, so it was. I was actually probably Scotland's only psychic Church of Scotland minister. So people would come round, young couples, and say we were thinking of getting married. Could you? And I would say, "Ooh, I don't know about that." You know,
I don't think it's in your
for you,
future.
I don't think that's going to last very long. What? Say, well, you shagging your sister. Other ones would come up and say, "Oh, that's a great idea. You're going to live for another 60 years. I'll marry you tomorrow." Yeah. So anyways, I can't do that anymore.
Bad for business though, in the psychic part.
So what was the question? I don't know what it was about.
Yeah, so when it comes to kind of like your fusion blend of commentary,
Yeah.
which one would you, if you had to go one way or another?
Sean took us off in a different direction.
Yeah,
You could go and
Sean,
get a proper
Sean
job.
always does this. Yeah.
Yes, I'm terrible for
Right.
that.
So I wouldn't do either.
Okay.
I would do both because two reasons. One is I enjoy them both, but they also give me different challenges.
Got
And
you.
part of my recovery is to address different challenges. So, and again, it's a little bit actually selfish, but it is for me. It's very, I can take the same poem and I can do a poem. I can do I can do one. I can take that poem to a school. Right, I've done lots of schools this year and last year, and I really like it. Go primary schools. I don't go to the secondary schools because my temper is a lot shorter than it used to be after the brain injury. And if some youth gave me any jip, they're getting stabbed. Right, I have the skills, I have the
I
ability.
mean, I haven't had a
the
brain injury, and
temperament,
I've got no
and
patience
I'm not
either.
getting it. So the young kids, much easier, right? So, but I can take one poem, I can do it with young kids, I can be interactive with the young kids and be creative, and I enable them, I empower them to be themselves and be creative in a classroom in a way that a teacher can't, because a teacher's got different confines.
Yeah.
I can actually stretch it slightly, but because I used to do so much facilitation in the past in my life, I used to facilitate conferences all around the globe. I used to teach people how to facilitate conferences and how to design conferences. I know how to set the parameters and control the classroom, but be a bit wider than this teacher, so I can get them to shout out the word bum, for instance, which they do, and they think it's amazing. Yeah, we're shouting out bum. But they can shout bum at home, but it's not very funny.
Yeah.
But they shout bum at school in front of the teacher, and this man's giving you permission is just excellent.
Amazing, yeah.
So I can do that poem with that child. I can take the same poem and I can go down to a club in Glasgow, usually the cabaret clubs, and they're usually in LGBT plus blah, blah, blah clubs.
Yeah.
And you get maybe a couple hundred people, and it's really nice. I can do the same poem, and they'll shout out bum. It means maybe something a bit different to them, but it's still fun. It's just fun, right? But the way I position it and the way I interact with them is slightly different. So, and that's the challenge that I like. And if I take it and I do it in a spoken word venue and a poetry, and they're all being very sensible, I'll do it there. But again, the way I position it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And if I do it in a comedy club, same thing. Everyone loves shouting out bum because it's great fun. But the way I position it again is different. So I really enjoy the challenge of having to think to myself, how am I going to set this up to be successful in this environment? And that's what's good for me to develop my abilities with my brain.
Of course.
It's like I need to get back to. I won't get back to where I was, but I want to get as close to where I was as possible. So the more challenges that I can create for myself, the better.
Do you think as well, so sorry, I've got so many questions off the back of that conversation, but do you think as well the whole kind of going into schools and stretching kids' minds and things like that, do you think that also, I know you're saying like it helps in your recovery process, but do you think it also helps based on the fact when you were younger you didn't do too well in school due to your dyslexia?
No, that's
And do you enjoy kind of
very
being
astute.
that person for kids?
Very astute young lady. That's exactly why I do it. And that's probably why it's the most personal rewarding. Because what I'm doing is I'm giving these children what I required.
Yeah.
But I did not
Didn't
get,
have, yeah.
You know? And of course, I don't have that conversation with them, but I know it deep within myself. And I shy away from just doing that. Because I know I could just do that and be a very, very happy man.
Yeah.
Sure.
I could put my kids off to school. I could go to some other school, cause a riot, go home and unlock children. And that's what I'm doing. I actually go and unlock children.
Yeah.
And I was in a place in Stonehaven, a school is what the place was called, in Stonehaven. And a couple of things happened to me there. I knew I was going to deal with the primary sevens. I didn't know I was going to get 3 primary sevens all at the same time.
Okay.
So it's quite big. And it was quite early on in my recovery. So I had to really go and lie down afterwards. But they really enjoyed it. And there was one boy just kept looking out the window. Now, when you're a school teacher, you can't let a boy look out the window.
Yeah, of course
You've
not.
got to say, pay attention and blah, 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 blah. And when I go to school and I do school assemblies, there's always some children who are looking different directions, or they've got a toy or something with them, and you know they've got some special learning difficulty or special needs or something. But it's nice because they're in the normal school, and I can always see them straight away. And the teachers normally come up and apologise and say all this. I said, don't worry, that person will be the one that takes part the most.
Yep.
Yeah, and it always happens. They always look across here, and it gets more and more and more silly. And then they want to answer all the questions, and they want to take part. And the headmistress says, "Oh, I've never seen them take part before."
Yeah.
But in Stonehaven, this guy was looking out the window, and I don't have to make him pay attention. I don't have to lay down any rules. I just do my stuff. So internally, my language is, I can't say it because it's swearing, but I'm thinking, wait, yeah, wee little
Yeah.
Of course.
so-and-so. But I'm going, I don't care. You can just be a little so-and-so. So I did my stuff. And then at the end of it, it turned out that 50% of the pupils had dyslexia, which I could not believe. And they were asking me all these questions about dyslexia and what have you. And then he said, could you come and help us with our show? Could you come and help us do our school? Yeah, I'll come and do the school show. That'd be cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then they said, then they liked my shirt I had on at the time. It was a very colourful shirt.
Yeah.
And I said, I think we should get this shirt to be your school uniform from now on. We'll make I'll send a note into the head teacher. Yeah, that'd be cool. And then someone said, are you a poet or are you a comedian? And I said, why are you asking? He said, well, you're doing poetry, but you're very, very funny. And I said, I'm both.
Yeah.
Well, hey. And then, so that went down well. But then the following week, the teacher wrote to me and said, that boy who was looking out the window all the time, I can't remember what his special need was, but he had something. Said he came in the next day and he asked for the computer because he wanted to write poetry.
Wow.
Nice.
And they say, you don't get the computer till the end of the week, until all your work is done. And he goes, no, I want the computer now. So they had a bit of a friction. And eventually he got this computer.
Yep.
He wrote his poem because he said, I wanted to write this poem, did the poem. Then he did a week's work in one day.
Wow.
And he said he just opened him up. He's just doing all this stuff. And I said, so when does he normally get the computer? What's as a reward for doing his work? And I said, maybe if you give him what he needs first.
Yeah.
Then you get all that work.
Yeah.
And they went, yeah, we hadn't thought about that. Now, I had no awareness of that when I went into the room. And I must admit afterwards I felt a bit embarrassed because I was having some terrible thoughts about this little so-and-so
Yeah.
who was looking out the window and ignoring me. But actually, there was something going on within him. And all I was doing was enabling it.
Yeah.
You know? And it's nice to have that feedback.
But you obviously didn't realise the impact at the time because to you, in that moment, he was just looking out the window.
Well, you're working your audience,
Yeah, of
and
course.
you're making eye contact, and you're looking at smiley faces, even if they're
Yeah.
laughing inside, and you think, "Yeah, this is going well. This is going well." Okay, I'll just ignore him, you know. But actually, something is going on inside, which is lovely, and I get that story in all the schools I go to. And I did one in what's it called now, Gilcomston School. I did it because it's close to Union Street, and I've been there about 4 times this year. And the idea was they would do poems and drawings about the future of Union Street. And we would put them in a shop window in Union Street.
Nice.
And I was working with our Union Street to do that. And I didn't quite come off, so it's now in an archway in Union Terrace, in Union Terrace Gardens, which is where all the kids from the school go to, because they all live in the centre of Aberdeen.
Okay,
That's why
yeah.
I went to that school, because they're the ones that actually frequent Union Street.
Got you.
And I wanted them to be able to show their uncles and aunties and mums and dads and what have you, their work in a shop window,
Wow.
being this is what Union Street will look like. So now they have to take them down to Union Terrace Gardens and show them there. But what I loved about that was there was maybe only one white Scottish boy. Everybody was from all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were so polite and so creative, and they worked so well together. And there was no rules in the classroom. They all just sat where they wanted to sit. And every visit I made, there was different seating arrangements,
and
and
you're
they
like,
chose
"What's
that themselves. And it was so multicultural. And I thought, this is such a wonderful,
Brilliant way
wonderful
to do it,
thing.
yeah.
And there was new children turning up. Every time I visited, there was new children, and some hardly spoke any English.
Yeah.
But they all got looked after
Yeah.
by each other. And it was such a lovely thing to see.
So I'm going to be one of those kids from the school and ask you questions about your dyslexia now.
Okay.
But when did you kind of first get kind of diagnosed with dyslexia? Do you,
A long time ago now. So I'd be almost 30.
Okay.
And I worked it out for myself. And I
Right,
thought,
okay.
this is, everything was a struggle. Filling up forms, doing anything. And what it did do, of course, was it gave me a very lateral thought process, because that was the answer. And I couldn't get to it. So I had to go all the way around here to work out different ways to get to there.
Yeah.
Which probably has got something to do with my, the way I think. Well, it's got to do with how I think, but it's probably how I think with my comedy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I go away across here and it makes perfect sense to me. And I'm thinking, what the hell is that guy talking about? But actually it makes perfect sense, because I've got to get there. I've got to go there.
to link
get
back.
here.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, I'm coming. I'm
it's
getting
coming,
there.
it's coming.
I'm coming back.
So I thought I need to get better at this, because it was a struggle with every day at work. Everything I did was a big struggle.
Okay.
And I had to find different ways of doing it. So I'd probably be about my late 20s or 30, and I saw an evening class for people with dyslexia. And I said to my wife, I'm going to go to that evening class for this. And she goes, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
So part of it was like owning up to yourself.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I went along and had a little interview, and the lady said it's called word blindness. And I said, okay. She goes, so when I tell you this word, how do you spell it? I said, I don't know how you spell it. That's, I think I'm dyslexic. So, and she goes, don't you see the word in your mind? And I goes, no, I don't see anything in my mind. She goes, well, most people, when they spell a word, can see it in their mind's eye, and then tell you. And I'm going,
Don't have that.
don't have that. Because that's what it's called, word blindness. What is in your head? I said, well, I saw the goal that Davy Proven scored on Sunday or whatever. I was just like, I don't know. I'm seeing Archie Gemmell as a complete god. I don't know. What am I seeing? And then they gave me a little bit of advice. And they said, I thought you go to a class, but they said, you don't get a class, you get one-to-one tuition, because each person has got their own coping mechanism and will teach you different coping mechanisms. Fine. So I being in my late 30s, went and did that, and then they never got back to me. But what I did realise was that I felt much, much better about myself because I'd had a conversation about it. And I know, because people talk about it, that when you are an alcoholic, that owning up to being an alcoholic is one of the biggest things. So almost like 50% of the burden had gone away because I had confessed to it. Because I was also deeply, deeply ashamed.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm very timid and very frightened of doing many, many things. I shied away from lots of stuff. I thought I'm going to be asked to read something, and I'm going to be asked to spell something, and I can't do it, so I wouldn't do it. Which again probably has something to do with how I created my own poems and stuff. I created my own safe environment. I created an environment that nobody else could possibly do. So they couldn't tell me I was wrong, because I wasn't wrong. It's my stuff. So, and I think, when I went around the globe and facilitated these large events and taught people how to facilitate and what have you, I had skills that nobody else in the room had. So I developed skills that nobody else had because of the dyslexia. And I made lots and lots of money and sold it because nobody else could do it. But it was also a protection because of the deep shame that I had at not being able to fit in at school. And by owning up and letting some of that go, it's like, oh, actually,
this is a superpower in this.
Somebody would turn and say, could you write this stuff up in the flip chart? No, I will not, because I'm dyslexic. And they go, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed.
I'm so sorry.
And I go, So I suddenly find there was a power in owning up and admitting it. And I felt less and less and less ashamed about it.
And then did that help you kind of, I've got a follow-on question from that, how it fits back into these questions, I promise. But did you, when you kind of had that conversation with yourself and kind of admit, did you then realise actually the whole being in a school environment, and obviously you said earlier, like, you didn't do well in exams and blah, blah, blah. Did you realise that actually you weren't the problem there? It's that you didn't have the right kind of environment that you needed at that time?
I don't think my answer is as smart as that. I think it's a very smart answer, but it's not as smart as mine. I think mine is just very much looking back, because I see it now with children who get recognised very, very early on. I mean, I've got 5 children, and the oldest one is 40 and the youngest one is 10. So I've seen how it's been addressed in their school life. And the 40-year-old, I mean, she doesn't have dyslexia, but people at her school did, and it was recognised at that time. So I've seen how it's addressed, and it's completely different. And they're now in a great place with how they manage that. So I just look back and think society at the time
wasn't ready to.
It wasn't there, And of course, I think a lot of my rebelliousness, me being rebellious in a very silly manner, was me rebelling against that society and the fact that it let me down. And I do feel let down, but I don't blame them. So it's just being very silly and doing stuff that was really just taking the piss out of society and out of grown-ups and out of these people that could spell and read. It was just me going, I'm doing this now, and you can't do anything about it because I'm on TV and you're not. So,
I'm a radio show at the Lemon Tree.
I'm getting paid lots of money, so so part of it was just a rebellious thing as you go through, because I could do that.
Of course.
I created my own safe place, which I think I still do, because I sometimes I go along and do a poem that's actually is not silly. And people kind of go, ooh, and usually it's very
that's
impactful.
Not Sid,
because, and sometimes I give some of me. But for a long time I would never have done that, because I just hide behind the silliness, because it's that safe place that I created for myself.
I think that's every comedian. That's why you do. It's almost like that. Like, it's nice.
It's a standard thing.
Thick layer of I'll do the silliness in front of me, so you can't penetrate the vulnerability of myself.
Yeah, I did. I fell foul of that last year, the year before. I did a thing for Friends of the Earth that was talking about the oil business and how it impacted the culture in Aberdeen and how the downfall of it was impacting and how we shouldn't have oil.
Yeah.
And they asked me to go along and do stuff, which I was happy to do. And I had to write things just on that subject. And they filmed it and then made a video out of it. And they took it around different places in Scotland and what have you, and had discussions. And so I made up 2 very silly poems, but I said a couple of things at the beginning which were sensible and insightful, for me insightful, saying, well, this is what happened when I was first worked in oil and gas, blah, blah, blah. Now, what they did was they didn't use my video, didn't use the poems. They took these statements and they broke them up and they made their own narrative. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Your audience are gunning for old white men, right, who have been responsible for this in the past. I've turned up and given you all this comedy japes about in my poems, made a couple of genuine comments about what I'd seen as a young man. I saw these older guys doing stuff, behaving in this manner, and how I couldn't do any of that stuff because it was like, ugh. And you've taken that and you're putting me as that voice of that white old man who did all this. And I thought, oh, that's very nasty. And I actually asked them to remove it. And it went on for a very, very, very long time. And it was removed eventually. And I remember they said, well, come to the premiere and watch it. And actually it sparked a conversation from some females in the audience who were very angry about the role that these rich old white people played, and you even got them on the video. And I'm going, well, there you go. That's the case.
That's why I asked you to remove
these sexist blah 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 blah. So, and my whole routine was something completely different. Yeah, and they're just taking these little bits out, and then so they took it out, but they left a bit in the trailer, which I didn't realize. And then somebody from the university sent me a little clip. And students at the university who were doing art and design or something had used my voice, which I think there's a little bit which I said, oil, you make my blood boil, something like that. And they'd used that little that little snip from the trailer, and they had made a heart, which was pulsing and it was a black heart pulsing, and it had my voice in it. And they were saying, "Oh, thanks, Sid." And they gave it to me as saying, "Wow, this is great. We've developed this wonderful thing, and we've got your voice, and we've used it, and we think we should share it back. Like you see how inspirational you've been." And part of me was like, "It's really nice that the students have got my voice and they're doing." But actually, I asked for that not to be shared into the public domain, but it was in the public domain and it was picked up and used. I think it was, "Oil, you make my blood boil, but I thank you for feeding my children and my grandchildren." It's something like that was a statement. Because that's ultimately what happened. Right. It did feed my children and my grandchildren. And it's still, my grandchildren. But the fact they put it out, and I thought, now if I wanted to, I could go down a different route.
Yeah, of course.
And I remember thinking, well, I know that's how it works, and I should have been more cautious. So that kind of made me think, be very careful before you share what you really, really think. Yeah. What you really think and what you really feel.
Yeah, but even then, though, the rest of your routine was so different. So it's like if you break things up and take things out of...
It was disappointing that they took 1% of what I'd done.
And for their own narrative as well,
to create something. But I think that's...
But that happens.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely, it does. But in terms of... you kind of spoke about, I think you've already answered this question, to be perfectly honest, but do you...
I might give you a different answer this time.
Maybe. Let's see.
I just make stuff up.
Do you think as well that like your dyslexia has impacted your creative journey? And if so, were there kind of any challenges or disadvantages or positives to being a dyslexic artist? Because infamously, you always introduce yourself as the only Scottish dyslexic poet. I think something along that lines.
Yeah. Although I've had to change that because when I go to comedy venues, there's always dyslexic poets. So I'm dyslexic. Oh. So I actually say,
but I was the first.
So I say I'm a top dyslexic poet. Okay. A number one dyslexic. And I said, well, you can be number two, right? Because I was born well before you, or something I say I'm the tallest. Because normally I go on and people have to put the microphone stand up, or I say I'm the oldest. So I can use the dyslexic poet thing if I'm in a school or from a comedy club, because people go, "Oh, I dyslexic poet, oh, that's funny." But if you go to a poetry club, where you can't be dyslexic poet because we're all dyslexic, and you've got to go on and say what your pronouns are, and you've got to say what your sexuality is, and blah 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 blah. And I just go and say, "Well, I'm just an old man." And that's what's your pronouns? Old goat is usually it. And,
That's you.
yeah, that's funny, but you can't use it. So I can't. So the dyslexic thing is. What the hell was the question?
Yeah, so do you think has been any kind of real sort of advantages / disadvantages? And if so, what have you had to kind of overcome?
So I think early on, the biggest thing, I have answered it a little bit, but the biggest thing was just my own
coming to terms
my own shyness and the fact that I felt so bad about it. I mean, I felt deeply ashamed. I felt deeply, deeply ashamed because that's how I'd been schooled. I'd have to say, because my mum wouldn't listen to this, she brought me up as being simple. Because she thought, well, this guy will never, he won't be able to live a life.
Right.
He'll need to be supported.
Okay.
And my father, I only find this out from my mother later. I knew how I was being brought up because I was there.
Yeah.
But she did say, well, your dad said, don't worry, he'll be okay. And Mum was like, no, he can't do anything, right? He can't function. Luckily, she didn't tell me that when I was young, but it was obvious by the way she was bringing me up. So I had a deep, deep shame, and that's also the way I was treated at school by the teachers and other kids, really.
Peers, yeah.
But there was a whole bunch of real dumbasses, so I just hung out with them. You know what I mean? The real freaks, I hung out with the freaks in the corner. Oh, hello, you look like a freak. Yes, come here. So I had to overcome that. Yeah. But by working hard on the jobs I had and being very good at the jobs I did, kind of helped me get confidence. But I also, one of the other reasons for not doing more of the drama is I couldn't sight read.
Okay.
So I thought I need to just make up my own stuff.
Yeah.
So that no one can tell me it's wrong. And even if I forget it, no one knows that I've missed out a line because they don't know the line.
Yours,
you know? So part of it about creating my own material was the fact that I couldn't actually read other people's material, or I could read it very, very slowly, and people say, well, he can't play that part, or you can't be involved in this because you can hard, the presentation was so bad. So I had to kind of get to a stage where I didn't go internal, but I kind of let things come out naturally. So by making up my own stuff really helped me with that. And I think I've got better at reading, and I've got better at writing. Yeah. And autocorrect, or whatever it's called, helps quite a lot, as long as I get people to double check the words I picked. Because I've made a couple of real big boo-boos in the past.
Oh gosh, not to confess, I am dyslexic as well, and when the autocorrect comes up as well, I'm like, that could still be wrong. I've got no reference whether that is the correct spelling of that or not. But I've seen it enough times, it must be true. Because my wife, she's very, very smart. Book smart. Amy will read books and books and books. And she says, how do you... So I'm quite good with math, but it's not the fact that I know the formula well, it's that I've memorized it and figured out why it is the way it is. Yeah. So multiplication, I actually do addition. Okay. So if I'm doing my times tables, it's actually all the way up here in addition, so I can do it really, really quick. And Amy had said, she goes, how do you remember the formulas to this? And I was like, I don't know them. I've memorized the pattern of which it comes along. This is very similar to comedy. There's a rhythm to this. After this, it must come this. And she goes, that is the most convoluted way to get to the answer. I says,
like what Sid was saying, you get from here to here.
You're right. I says, you're absolutely right. And I said, actually, I think you need a little bit of ADHD to go along with your dyslexia as well to make sure it goes a little bit faster. Just go a little bit quicker. I says, it all works. It's sort of neurotypical or neurodivergent or whatever it is, but it's...
So nowadays, I just memorize my poems and I make them rhyme on purpose so I can memorize them because it is that pattern. I find it very difficult to memorize poems that don't have a pattern unless as a joke. And then I follow the process to get to the joke. And I suppose that's the same for any comedian. Every comedian you watch has a process. Now, it might not be obvious, but the more you watch that comedian, the more you work out the process. And it is quite nice to know your own process because then you can... It's easier to put things together.
Yeah.
You feel like a hack. You're like, I've just figured out how to do this a little bit. You know, they don't know. I know.
Yeah. And everyone has their own way of working. And their own way of memorizing stuff. And,
you write. You said you write jokes, or you write your poetry a lot, is it? Do you do longhand? Do you type? What's best for yourself?
I do a bit of both. Depends what I'm doing, I suppose. Usually it does. Yeah, depends what it is. When I'm thinking about it, when I'm visualizing this, so I make up silly songs and I put them on YouTube, and the music's done usually with a man down in Glasgow.
Yeah.
Ian, who I've never met in my entire life. Never met him. I was on the radio once was in Vienna, was it? Yeah. Flew to Vienna for Christmas. And it was
Magical city.
22nd of December or whatever. And we arrived, and the radio station in Glasgow said I'd put out an EP, which I think I explained to you once. An EP was an extended play.
Yep.
Because when you used to have 7-inch singles, and you would get one song on one side and one song on the other side. But if it was an EP, you could get 2 or 3 tracks on each side. So if you go and buy some Sid vinyl, you'll find that with different tracks on the other side. But when you do it online, it's still called an EP. So it was an EP, but it had like maybe 3 or 4 tracks on it.
Yeah.
And they wanted to interview me. So when we landed, and I had to go to this apartment, and I had to phone in at a certain time. And so we phoned in, I got interviewed, and they played 2 or 3 of the songs. And then this guy popped up on Facebook saying, "Hey, my name's Ian, and I've just been listening to you on the radio." He said, "I stay in Glasgow, but I'm from Macduff originally." "Oh, that's fine. So, just somebody saying nice things, so you say nice things back. And then after about 2 years, we had a common contact, a guy called Paul, who runs a lot of the burlesque and the cabaret stuff in Glasgow. And he came back and said, "Oh, Ian was wondering if you'd like to record a song, the 3 of us together."
Nice.
So Ian wanted to, but didn't have the confidence to ask. So he got this go-between.
You found a mutual friend.
Because Paul knew me and had met me, and I was doing gigs with him. And he said, yeah, and he put forward an idea, and it was crap. Right? So I wrote some stuff, and this doesn't work. So then Paul stepped aside because it wasn't working, they were trying to rewrite something they'd already written. That's what it was. So Paul wrote some words, I wrote some words that were different from each other. And I was like, and they had a track, it's like, this isn't, So it's too many cooks or whatever it was. So then Ian and I got connected. And when I write with him, either he has an idea or I have an idea, and I sit down and I write it out by hand. Because normally I need to see it. And it's rhythmical, and you've got choruses, and you've got bits, and you've got pieces, and it's easier to do that. And then I'll go and type it up. And then I might change it a bit. And I'll sing some stuff and send it through to him, and he'll send back some music, and I'll go, we'll change this and change that. And I might modify it once it's been typed. But normally when I'm writing for a song, I'll write it out longhand. Yeah. And I can see it, and I can see the structure, because songs tend to be structured. There's so many bars and blah, blah, blah. And you've got the intro, and you've got this, and you repeat that bit. Whereas if I'm doing something for stage, because most of my stuff's made up to perform on stage, I visualize it, and I see it, and normally I make it up in my head. Now, I used to be able to make up the whole thing in my head and memorize it all, and then I go and write it down. Now I can't memorize things very well. So what I do is make up little bits, and then I go and write them down, usually type it up, and say, type that bit up, and then take that away, and make up something else in my head and go back and type that up. It's a much slower process than it used to be. Before I could make up the whole thing walking home from the pub, and I go home and go, I've got this whole thing.
I've got a stage show.
And I could recite it next day, and the day after, and the day after. And eventually I thought, I better write it down. And I just wrote it down and put it away somewhere. But now I've got to write it down. So I think really that if it's something I'm making up for on stage, I'll make up in bits in my head, then type it. If it's a song, I'll do it by hand. And I was making up a song for Union Street. And I got a bit disillusioned for the fact that they couldn't actually give me the shop window after all these promises. And I really wanted to call it Onion Street. Onion Street, oh, Onion Street. It is the place that we take our feet. And but then we've got, anyway, but no one takes the feet there. But anyway, so because they let me down a bit, I thought I better change it to Union Street. So I keep seeing this piece of paper that I wrote. I haven't seen it for a long time, but I see it in my mind. I think I'm going to go back and do that, but I'm going to call it Onion Street, because I feel a bit disappointed that they couldn't get the children's pictures in the shop window in Union Street. And we're going to have a barcode thing that you can scan. It would tell you it would tell you the history of the school, and it would tell you how many nationalities were at the school, and it would tell you that the school taught they teach Gaelic at that school. So I had all these things that they said, oh yeah, we can do this, this and this, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So we've still got something nice for the kids to go and see. But I thought, I'm a bit disappointed.
That it didn't pan out the way you wanted.
I'll just call it Onion Street.
Street.
And I'll just be rebellious, because what's the point of conforming and trying to be nice to adults when I can be silly? And we've got something spires, we've got churches, something about gutters.
Gutters.
But the whole thing is, when you look at Union Street, you've got churches, you've got spires, and you've got not much else. We've got places you can go and eat food now, and you can vape and you can gamble.
You can vape and gamble, the two most important.
That's the staples of any healthy diet.
Absolutely.
So I was making up a song like that. I thought, that's not what they want. It's not what they want. I think they'd seen something I'd done. I think they'd seen me I did a little song called Handing Back My OBE, when I handed back my OBE. And they'd seen that and said, oh, we like this. Can you make something up about Union Street? And I thought, oh, yes, I'll be an
Yes, I
adult.
can.
And I made this thing up. And then because they didn't, let the children down. But I never told the children we were going to do that bit.
Yeah,
they
that's
just knew
good.
the first bit.
Yeah.
So I thought, no, I'm just going to go Onion Street, because that really is me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go home now and do that. But that's handwritten because it's a song.
Nice.
We can't have you here and kind of not ask that, 46 years of creativity, what has kept you motivated and inspired for the 46 years to keep going with your kind of comedy, poetry fusion?
Drugs.
Or in general.
Drugs. Just the good ones.
Medication, yeah. That's a good thing about getting old, actually. You get drugs for free.
They're prescribed tea.
And the other good thing about getting old is it doesn't last very long.
Yeah. Just wears off.
No, not the drugs, I meant life. Get the joke, for goodness sake. He got it straight away.
Yeah, that's because Sean does drugs. I'm joking.
And a quickie can last 2 or 3 days.
Oh, well.
My wife takes books to bed now. Okay, hurry up. Some of the books must be quite bad because she falls asleep halfway through.
Keeps
a
in
more
the
exciting book. Anyway, hang on.
keep it in iron, so they're
Sounds like I'm on stage now. The question was, what keeps me going?
Yeah.
So I don't know about the past, but I know about the present because I realised that, and it was part of the recovery from the brain injury.
Yeah.
I got to a stage that I realised that even when I wasn't necessarily doing comedy, and when I was going out and doing these training courses, or I was doing conferences, or I was training people up.
Yeah.
What I was doing was I was creating something. Yeah? I was memorizing it and creating it, and then I was delivering it.
Yep.
And I thought, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. And I looked back to what I did at the Children's Theatre when I started going when I was about 9 or 10, and they got me to learn how to project my voice and how to be clearly understood and what have you. And I went through processes there, and what I was doing on a Saturday morning was being creative. And I was allowed to use my imagination, and then I had to craft it and rehearse it and get it ready, and I had to go and deliver it. And I thought that process is a really important process for me. Now it's taken shape in different forms, either in different places at different times, whether it be on the radio or some stuff on TV, or whether it be doing comedy clubs or doing whatever, poetry clubs, or traveling around the world making lots of money doing different things. That process was important to me.
Yeah.
And I recognise that's the process I have to follow to help me with my recovery. So what I want to create, do I want to go and work for some? No. I've got a bunch of money and I've got a nice house and got a lot of nice things. I don't need all that money and I don't want to do it for somebody else. What do? I make up silly stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make up silly stuff. I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to package it and get it organised, and I'm going to go out and deliver it. And as you said earlier, which outlet do I prefer? I prefer all the outlets because they are a challenge for me to have to get better at creating stuff, practicing it and delivering it. So I was meant to do a show at the Art Centre this weekend, which actually was in the Children's Theatre to get money for the Children's Theatre.
Okay.
Nice. It was being refurbished. And they have a disabled toilet. That is the facility for the theatre. But it's so disabled that they couldn't do the show because it doesn't work. It broke down last week. So they said, can we move the show? And I said, yeah, we'll move the show. So last week I was creating, how am I going to do this show on Saturday?
Yep.
And I've been doing magic tricks recently in my act. And I've been learning magic. So when I was in Edinburgh, I had magic tricks in my act. And I thought, right, I'm going to do magic tricks at the Art Centre. I'm going to do something, most of them are just really bad and really silly. And you go, oh, this guy can't really do magic. but at the end, there's something very special and very magical. And you go,
He can.
You can, because that's part of the joke, right?
Yeah.
So last week I was making that up. So it's like, how do I package that to make sure I'm successful on Saturday? And then that was cancelled. That's cool. So now what's the next thing? So I'm going to have to create something for that, and that'll be a bit different.
Okay.
And I went last week to Love Comedy just to try out a magic trick that I'll do at my gig, which is 46 Years of Sid.
Yeah.
And it's an adult magic trick, not adult as in rude.
Excuse me?
That's it involves alcohol. I couldn't do it at the children's. At the
Well, you
family
could,
show.
but you would never get back.
I couldn't do it. So it's like each time I do something, it's like, okay, let's go and create something different now.
Yeah.
But it's all variations of the same thing.
Nice.
So that's what keeps me going, is the fact that it allows me to be creative. It gives me a vehicle and a purpose. Because when I got the brain injury, your life is taken off you, and you don't have a purpose or at all. You have nothing, and it can be quite it is quite devastating.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I remember being. You end up meeting lots of other people under similar circumstances, or you end up joining groups online of people, and the stuff to talk about, you think, yep, I recognise all that.
Yeah.
But it's up to you to decide not to be that person, but to be a better version of yourself.
Okay.
And I meet people who say, oh, my dad's the same age as you, and he had a stroke, and the symptoms are very, very similar. He just stays at home and doesn't do anything anymore. Why do you do that? I say, well, because I want to have a better quality of life than sitting at home.
Yeah.
So I used to do a whole bunch of stuff I can't do anymore. I might not get to do it all, but
you'll be
I
able
want
to
to do as much
regain
of that
some
as I
of it.
can.
Yeah,
But I've only got a limited amount of time left.
Yeah.
How much can I do, which is fun stuff, before that happens?
But even you saying that right now is quite profound
It is
to
really
me,
profound,
because
yeah.
I'm only 33. I appreciate people go, oh, this guy's just a young pup in the span of life. If I'm lucky enough to become old, but then I look back and go, gosh, I should have done this in my 20s, or this with my 20s, or blah blah blah. But listening to that, I'm going, well, hold on a second. You can do it right now.
You can do it right now. You can. I got to that stage, and I was. The example I'll give, I think I'd probably be in my 40s when I give this example, but because I felt deeply ashamed of myself and not being able to do stuff, I didn't have the confidence to stand up and do crazy stuff, because it was fun and it was a bit anti-society. It wasn't rude, it wasn't aggressive, it was just very, very stupid. And it really broke all the rules of what were the norms. And that was my way of doing it, but I didn't have the confidence to really push myself, which is probably quite good, actually, because it could have gone all badly wrong if I'd done something. If I'd taken up some of the opportunities that came along, I could have all gone badly wrong. But
Doreen.
I don't even know what that means.
He's going back to your amateur dramatics and the ladies. That's what it was.
I actually stay quite close to where that lady's staying. Now I stay quite close. And when I drive up that road, it's like, oh no. Let's speed up.
The flashbacks, yeah.
Slow down, no, I must speed up. So what we were talking about.
You were in your 40s and you gave an example. Yeah.
So I recognised at a certain stage that I hadn't taken the opportunity to do stuff. So I made up my mind, I'm going to do anything that's scary, I'm going to go and do it.
Wow. Okay.
So I probably would be in my 30s when I made up my mind to do that. And if it's scary, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But the example I'm giving is when I was in my early 40s, and I used to cycle a lot. You can't tell by this, but I used to cycle a lot, and I cycled across the Sinai Desert.
Okay.
And we were going to cycle in Israel at the time from, and I think it was from the Dead Sea to Nazareth. And there was some troubles at that time had broken out, and they said, I was with a Christian group, being a Church of Scotland minister in a previous life, psychic, of course. I should have seen all this coming, but I didn't.
You can see all these questions I've got for you.
Yeah. So there was some trouble broke out. They said, we can't have a group of Christians cycling across because you get shot. Okay, so let's go to Egypt, and you can cycle across the Sinai Desert instead and get into Israel at the border.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. So we did that instead. And although there was lots of people we had armed guards with us all the time. Okay. And I thought, why is this? Well, it's still not safe here, but it's safer than there. And I said, I'm okay. And they said, can you cycle as fast as a speeding bullet? And I was very fit at the time. I said, yeah, I can cycle as fast as a speeding bullet. I just can't cycle as far as a speeding bullet. So we'll cycle in Egypt. So we cycled in Egypt so many days, did Mount Sinai and all that kind of stuff, got to Egypt. And we had a day off in Eilat, which is like a coastal area.
Yep. Yeah.
And we had two options on the day off. One was to swim, do underwater with tanks. What's that called? Is that snorkel?
Scuba diving.
Scuba diving.
Yeah.
or go on a yacht. And people were
Okay.
like, oh, a yacht's very fancy. And I thought, I'm really, really scared of scuba diving. The whole idea of going underwater and not being able to breathe petrifies me.
Yeah.
So people were saying, oh, so you're going to come in the... Nope, I'm going underwater. And I go, really? And we got there, and there's this other guy and I who were quite obviously, in our minds, couldn't get into our heads that you can go underwater and breathe.
Yeah.
And everybody else is like going under, going, yeah, we're breathing underwater. And I'm going, I'm not going into that water. But I made myself. I remember going when I first went in, I got back out again. It's like, it's just,
Can't do it, yeah.
Can't do this. So I had to break that mental model, and I forced myself to do something that I was absolutely petrified of,
Rather than going on a yacht.
rather than going on a yacht with a lady. What was her name? Anyways, a lady.
Doreen?
No, she was much younger, maybe her granddaughter.
Doreen?
But I was a single man at the time, and anyway, I turned that opportunity down on the yacht.
And you went scuba
I
diving.
went scuba diving.
Yeah.
But then what happened was that it was a beautiful coral area, and they had an opening, and dolphins were allowed to come in
Oh, wow.
if they wanted to, but also free to go back out to sea. And dolphins came in and also were doing this. And the dolphins came and just beside myself and the other man who
were terrified.
Who were terrified, yeah. And they came, and I remember it, and everybody else just ignored because they were like, yeah, we're having a great time. We do this all the time. And it came up, and I remember it standing like this right in front of me.
My God.
And I got to stroke it and what have you. It obviously sensed these guys are shitting themselves.
Yeah.
So-
Probably it was it's probably the
brown
flow
trail
of the
behind
brown.
them.
So,
By the way, there's no sharks in here. If that's blood, don't worry. It's like, that's not blood.
this looks a bit puffy. So anyway, but I mean, I thought, wow, if the
You won't
challenge
get
isn't
that
there and you
experience.
don't make yourself do it, I would never have had that opportunity.
Oh my God.
For the dolphin to come and actually not speak to me, but communicate and what have you. I thought, wow, what a wonderful
It
thing.
spoke to you. Don't worry.
Yeah,
You know.
and we got out and people said, why did they come and see you two? Because we were absolutely petrified. You know, well, and I think I used like about 3 months worth of oxygen in about half an hour. Because I was really. So there's that example is about a certain stage in my life. I thought, when I'd been so scared of things, and although experiencing and living a very bizarre life,
Yeah.
I was making it safer and safer and safer. And the more bizarre I got, the safer it became for me.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm just going to go and do anything that's scary.
Yeah.
And then-
I mean, to reflect on that, had you not made that decision in your 40s, would your recovery have been as strong? Because when you first told me about what happened, I went, I didn't believe you. Not, of course, I believed you, but your performance that I had just seen was not that of someone who had very recently had a traumatic brain
Well,
injury.
the decision was made in my 30s, but the example I gave was in my early 40s.
For sure.
Because that's a good example with the dolphin.
It's a great example.
But I think... I don't know. That's the answer. Because what's going through my mind just now is my wife was telling me that the other week that what she liked was my positive attitude.
Yeah.
Because after 20 years, you got to like something. And I was like, what is it? It's positive attitude.
Yeah.
So, and I thought, yeah. And when I look back, I've always got things of, I'm going to do that. How are you going to do it? I don't know.
I'll figure it
But
out.
I'll
I don't
try,
know.
yeah.
But we're going to do, that's what I'm going to do, And even when I had like proper day jobs, people come and say, oh, this hasn't worked and blah, blah. That's really good because now we know it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So let's come up with something else.
What can you learn from it?
So there's something in my mind which says, yeah, that's cool, it hasn't worked. It's not a disaster. It just lets us know we're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
We'll go and look for something new. So but I think that might come from the dyslexia bit of actually looking for different solutions.
Avenues, yeah.
It's like, well, we know the obvious hasn't worked, so let's go and do something different, And I used to create a lot of stuff. I used to really annoy people when they give me like a big conference to design, and then maybe like 1,000 people turning up or whatever, and to them it was really important, and I wouldn't tell them what we were going to do because I would still be making it up. I would actually open up and find out, get lots and lots and lots of data and detail and go and speak to people and find out the culture and find out what the real issue was. And okay, so you want to get all these people to get from thinking that mental model to thinking this
here.
mental model. Well, let me go and research this and understand what all that's about. And once I understand what that's all about, then I can come up with a solution and a set of questions and processes and exercises that will get them to a different place.
Yeah.
So I would keep myself very, very open for a long time. Now, what they wanted was an agenda which starts on this time and blah, 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 blah,
finishes.
blah, 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 blah. Well, it's not going to address the core issue of what you've got. If you want to change someone's culture and change their mindset, we actually have to understand the culture and the mindset. So I'm going to go and absorb that culture and mindset. So it's something about my mind which will just go and take that information in. and then say, right, here's the answer. So I think part of the solution for the brain injury is like, I just need to be positive, which is what I am anyway.
Yeah.
Think about what's going on, look for some key things that work for you and do them.
Yeah.
And when I've gone for, I'm not sure, I can't remember what the word's called, but you go into a room and a lady gives you they give you advice, occupational therapy maybe it is.
Okay.
Occupational therapy. And they've got these different processes and routines. And then they think, oh, you've worked this out for yourself. And they go, yep, I worked it out for myself because I can.
Yeah.
So I can be insightful, I can work it out and say, that doesn't work. This does
is
work.
what does.
That's going to take me to a better place. So it's just a little bit of how my mind works, I think, to be honest.
Oh, we're lucky to have you. So we're lucky to have you.
So yeah, I think we've spoken a little bit about kind of the 46 years and your kind of Sid show, but I've got like 3 kind of follow-up, wrap-up questions
And
for
does this
you.
involve advertising the show so people buy tickets and come along?
Sure.
Absolutely. You can
but
plug away.
Yeah, what are your future plans? Are there any specific projects
what's 47
or goals?
years?
Yeah.
What's 47 years?
Is there any
look
goals
like?
you're working towards that you want to plug? But then I have 3 other questions afterwards.
Okay. So I don't want to do so I'm doing this show at the end of September, which is 46 years of Sid, and I don't want to do a show which is 47 years of Sid.
Okay.
I did 45 years last year and 44 the year before, and I set myself a target of doing 44 gigs in the 40 for that. And the gig, which was the 44th gig, was in fact 44 years of Sid.
Yeah.
So I worked up to that. And that was quite intense, but I wanted to give myself a target, a stretch target again. It's like, give myself a challenge. That's what I'm going to do. 45 I did because my friend Jimmy, who I made records with, or songs with, we don't put them out on platter anymore. He said, oh yeah, let's put out a single, which rotates at 45 because we're old. A 45 is a single. And he goes, let's make a single. And I went, no, because it'll cost me lots of money and nobody will buy it. So we'll make the song and we'll put the song out.
Yeah.
But I will do 45 years of Sid because it's rotates it, and we did that, and that was nice. And both those shows sold out really easily, and lots of people came, and it was very nice that people wanted to support me, and I really enjoyed it. I gave support gigs to people that I really like.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I really like you, and I want to encourage you, come and do this gig.
Yeah, nice.
And I met them in different places as I had recovered.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I gave one to. He's a man, yeah. Well, he's a man, but he didn't used to be a man. That was the point. So when the very first time I went into Spin, the headliner was this young man who did really cool songs. And it was obvious that he hadn't always been a man, but his songs were really funny. So I remember going back and offering him a gig. And
Yeah.
said, you come and do this.
Nice.
Because it had such an impact on me. I'm going to make myself come to Spin and learn how to do this stuff. So those are all nice. And I made money and I gave the money to charity, and that was a good thing. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it because it was fun.
Yeah.
And this year it's been quite a slog to sell it. But I haven't done 46 gigs. I've done 55 gigs
Yeah.
so far. So I thought, well, I'll try and do 60 for the 46 years of gigs. And I thought, do I want to go out and have to advertise all the time?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, I don't.
No.
I don't want to, So I thought, well, if I can live, I'll do 50 years of Sid. Because that's like a nice round
number, yeah.
I thought, I'll just leave it because I don't need to go and try and
Prove
follow
anything,
this.
yeah.
But it does let me perform for an hour and a half, which is great because people come along and they really enjoy it, and it's fun and it's interactive, and I get to be me. Because just now I just get to give little bits of me.
Yeah.
So I get to do a longer gig is much nicer, and you can kind of go up and down and do different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And although Ray Thompson's asked me to do his last gig next year at the what's that place?
Beach Ballroom.
He got back and said, "Could you be the support act?" He said, "Because I've just learned an awful lot from you," which I thought. I don't know what he's learned, but that's nice. But I don't get an hour and a half. I mean, he gets the hour and a half, and I get like 10 minutes or something. I thought that's a nice thing to do. So I won't do the big gig next year. I'll do the 50 years, I think, or skip it 2 years. But trying to sell yourself all the time and get people to buy tickets, it's just I don't need that. I have been writing a book this year, which is the A to. No, it's not. That's a poem. I was going to say the poem's called the A to Z of Osel animals. So, which is a clever way of saying Oslid and animals.
Yeah,
together.
I like that.
I
Yeah.
like it.
And I've actually got a poem called the A to Z of Osel animals that I was performing at the Fringe. But what I have been doing is an arc full of poems. So I've been writing animal poems all year And every gig I go to, I'll do at least one animal poem.
Okay.
And then I say, today I shared these poems. And I have a young lady who's doing some artwork for me. So what I need to do is not go out and perform so much, but actually finish the book. Finish the book. And actually, when I was at a printer this week, I went down because I know the guy who runs it used to work for me. And he said, oh, come on down. But then he was saying, oh, I could print your poetry book and I could do this and I could do that. I thought, yeah, maybe I should. I need to
Do it, yeah.
I need to get that over the line. I've only got so much time because I have my rehab stuff I do. I got my 2 youngest children I look after.
Of course.
The chickens and
Yep.
the cat. And then I have my performance stuff. And I thought I need to spend more time on the book. And I want to go and try then to go and maybe do some more schools.
Okay.
Nice.
And it's just about just changing focus slightly.
Yeah.
But what I don't need to do is have to spend a lot of time on
Advertising.
Facebook saying,
Yeah.
here's another advert for this blooming show.
Yeah.
And let someone else advertise the shows and I just turn up and perform them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does
Yeah.
make absolute perfect sense.
And it's really just one step at a time. I mean, that's not like a big future thing. That's just like, I need to go and spend some more time in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see
Things
how
you're
the book
already
works
doing.
out. Let's see how I can get it printed. It's just everything takes me a lot longer than it used to. And thinking things through takes a lot longer than it
Yeah,
used to.
of course.
So the next thing is, let's go back and finish the book. Let's do the 46 years of Sid gig. I'm making money to give to children in Palestine
Okay, wow.
because I'd like
Amazing.
them to eat.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I heard some horrible things about that. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but
Yeah, but that's what you want to do.
Killing and starving children, not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want the money to go there. So now you have to both buy tickets.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Where can people get tickets?
Yeah,
Oh, how should I know?
Yeah.
Well, come right to my
We'll
house.
get the link
You
and
can get the
we'll-
link, yeah.
yeah,
So
we'll
it's
put it up.
it's on. Is it? I don't know what the thing's called.
Is it Eventbrite?
Yeah, it's it. Thank you.
Eventbrite, yeah.
Yeah. So it's 46 years of Sid Osland,
Yeah.
and it's on Eventbrite, and you can get
Yeah.
it there. Or of
Perfect.
course, you can get me on social media, and I keep advertising it on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the usual things, which is Facebook, because I'm old, so I can use that.
Yeah.
Instagram, which I can't really use, but I dabble with it. But I've got young people in the house who can help, so I'm on
Perfect.
that. And TikTok, which I'm actually getting quite good at.
You are. I like your chicken videos, I must say.
Chicken videos are a big hit. So some of them really take off, and you get like 27,000 views, and sometimes you get 500 views.
Yeah, we're
feel you.
we're in that arena. And I think the last 2 questions I would love to ask you are, number 1, what are the most important life lessons you've learned through your experience as a poet and a comic, or a person in general?
Life lessons. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's a life lesson, but I spoke to a man today because he stopped me when I was leaving. I go to Neuro Pilates on a Monday.
Okay.
So
Neuro Pilates.
Wow.
So Neuro Pilates is designed for people who have got a challenge, neurological challenges. So I find it very tough at the beginning of the class because they tell you stuff and you have to process it and you have to then transfer it into your body and what have you, which is something that I couldn't do for a long time, and now I get better at it. At the end of the class, I'm a lot more fluid. And this man caught me at the end of it. He was coming in actually, and his son had fallen and banged his head really badly. His son had
Okay.
come back from Saudi for some holiday time, and he cracked his head and he got told not to fly, not to work, blah blah blah.
Wow.
And the surgeon had said, "Oh, when I saw your notes, I thought this man's very lucky to be alive." Cracked his skull, got a little bit of air in there, but nothing too serious. And he said, "You know, you've been through all this stuff. What would you advise?" And I said, for something like that, it's about pacing yourself.
Okay.
Because you've only got so much energy in your brain. I used to liken it to an old Nokia phone. You know, the battery was
The
dead.
3310.
And you would charge it all night. And the next day you go, yeah, it's fully charged. And you use it and you go, just die. And you go, so that's what my brain was like. And I said, okay, actually, well, that's what the advice I give your son is you'll want to do what you used to do, but don't, because it won't work for you. Let go of the past is a very important thing because you'll never manage to do that, but really rest in between and then focus at one thing at a time. So although that was about his son's brain injury,
Yeah.
I think that's actually probably quite a good thing in life,
Yeah.
is to actually just stop, recharge yourself,
Let go of the
get
past.
focused, do one thing at a time. And also, I remember I used to tell this story when I used to teach. I used to run marathons. Before I did the cycling, I used to run marathons. I just started cycling because marathons, you start getting sore bones and muscles and stuff, and you get older. I used to run marathons. And I remember the first time I did it, you train and train and train and train and train, so you get yourself all ready and you go, yeah, I can do this. So I think I can do it because you got 26 miles. You don't really run 26 miles as you're training. You might do 5, then 10,
Right.
then 15, and maybe 20. Then you think, oh. So you go for 26. And I thought, that's where I want to get to. but I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. And I would run, and you would see these guys with yellow jackets on, and they would point and say, you go this direction, and the next one with yellow jacket, you go in that direction. So I had in my mind that they had hundreds of people with yellow jackets all the way around the route, pointing different
Telling
ways,
you where
right?
to go, yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's pretty good. These people are going up all the time just for me to be ace and run this marathon. Then I realised, I saw him before, right? I saw that guy before. So what they had was maybe about 10 of them. And they pick them up and move them, right? And I thought, oh, right. So the way it works is you don't actually have to know all the stops. You just have to know that's where I'm going to. I have to be able to run 26 miles. But you don't actually have to know all the yellow jackets or which direction to go in. So I think, well, set yourself a target of I'm going to do such and such.
Yeah.
But you don't have to know how all the steps to get there, or all the yellow jackets. Just know the next step or the next step. So just know a couple of steps and think, yeah, I'm going to try that one. Another thing I would think is you learn before, you learn during, and you learn after.
Yeah.
So as you go into that next step, you know the long target. I'm going to learn before I get there. I'm going to learn during it. I'm going to learn after. And it's going to make it easier to get to the next yellow jacket and the next one and the next one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow.
Sid, you're
oh
not-
my gosh.
You are honestly.
You already answered my next question.
So you've actually,
with that.
you've unseated me, really. You've unseated me and you think, oh, so this is what he thinks about when he's not being silly on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Profound.
but again, because I know that part of you.
Yes.
And seeing this part of it, it makes sense.
He does, yeah.
see how it's done.
Well, it's not even seeing how it's done, but it's how well you perform. Like I always envy that. Anytime I watch him, I'm like, God, he's performed so cleanly. Like it was like a sharp knife cutting a bit of paper.
It's also how the audience reacts to Sid. Anytime I've seen you, which I would obviously love to see more of your comedy and your poetry as well.
27th of September.
Yeah, I know. Get there.
£4.60. £4.60 because it fits in with the 46 years.
Oh,
I
even
like
better.
it.
But it's how the
but at
audience
70
reacts.
years, it costs you £7.
No.
I mean, I think inflation, that makes sense. But it's how the audience also resonates with you and reacts to you, and it's always. I think it would be. I never have, and I hope I never do. But it'd be so hard to follow you. I know you said in this interview and like this podcast that people coming after you would always be like, and I could imagine feeling that way if I had to come after you. I'd be like,
no, not at all. Like maybe not for me. Sid gave me confidence because.
Oh yeah, no, there is that
there's
part
that,
of it.
you
But
know,
it's how the audience
Look
reacts.
at this young buck.
Yeah,
No, not at all. Like no, but yeah, listen to what you're saying there. Obviously about that resonated quite profoundly in my mind. Of that, there's only 10 guys with like jackets on.
You just move them.
Just move
slowly
them.
move
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
keep gaining.
So
to the
get
next
started,
spot.
get to the
Yeah.
first bit, then the next bit,
Yeah.
then the next bit. And I think the other thing is, I mean, that's a little bit of a process. And we talked earlier about each comic will have their own process.
Yeah.
So just know your process. The more you know your own process as a comic,
Yeah.
the easier it is to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've absolutely smashed my next question already. So I'll just skip to the last one, which is more about your kind of legacy and how do you hope to be remembered, and what would you want your legacy to be? Because I mean, you've had
he's not
46.
dead.
No, I know, but I mean, he's done 46 years. I mean,
Close.
That's
no, I know he's not dead, but like, what would he hope for?
It's a bit of a domestic going on here.
Oh
It's
yeah, I'm
lovely.
sorry.
It's lovely.
Sean's not happy. I should have pre-screened these for Sean.
So to be honest, it's a very strange question, not to ask, but to hear.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because you think it's a good question, but then I think I've been quite taken with your questions because here's something else I really strongly believe in: the better the question, the better the answer. Yeah. So I always, if I'm doing something that's important, I always really think the questions through first. And in the past, I've actually gone and tested the questions with people and said, what would this be? And they go, oh. And in fact, at one time, people used to phone me up when I worked for a living. People would phone me up and say, could you make up a question? This is what we're trying to do. What would be the best question? And I would say, this is the best question. And they go away and use it. So the question you've asked is a very powerful question, but to be asked, but to receive it is a bit like, I actually, when I'm not here, I don't care.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just like,
so true,
it means
yeah.
nothing to me.
Yeah.
It means nothing at all. I don't exist anymore. So,
But you mean a lot to a lot of people.
well, I don't know that, you see, because you don't know that. So, because you just do your stuff and go, hello, and then dance around. And, look, I'm doing a trick with this, I'm doing that, and I'm doing that, and now I'm dancing, and now I want you to shout out bollocks or whatever it is. And they go, yeah, well, shout it out. And there is something about people, something about adults getting to be childish and get to shout things out. It's like, yeah, he wants us to shout out scrotum. We'll just shout out scrotum. You know, it's like,
It's
what?
getting that permission to do be silly.
So I suppose that's what it is. I'm giving people permission to be themselves and to be their inner child and to be silly. And I think that's what it is there's something in there about I didn't get to be that child in the classroom. I got to be that child outside of the classroom, but not in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I'm giving people permission to be that child in the audience. So if people were to think about it, because it wouldn't matter to me because I wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he allowed me to be myself. That's probably it without me thinking about it. Because it's a good question. And I think you mentioned that I'm kind.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with it because I am kind. But I never give it any thought. I just...
You just naturally are that way.
Yeah, it's just, why would you not be? And I think that's why it works with kids. I mean, when I was in Edinburgh doing the Fringe, I asked advice, but at the beginning of the Fringe run, it was great. It was selling out and lots of people turned up, but it was like my average age of the audience was like 65 and and it was a family show and they would bring their kids who were like 35, right? It's a family show. Yeah, I've got my son here. I'm like, what? Who's the guy with a big dark beard? And his dad had a big grey beard, he had a big dark beard. Yeah, I saw you in 1978, so I'll take my son along and blah, blah. So I recognize my audience as just a bunch of old people, right? Who will die. And I won't have any audience. And I thought, I'm getting not the wrong people, because it's people who follow me on social media and came to my show, but I wasn't getting kids. And I was underneath the category of comedy. And of course, there's so much comedy. You get a book and there's that much comedy and there's that much theatre and there's that much spoken word and there's that much family. So people weren't coming to see me as a family show. Yeah. Because I was just lost in the comedy thing. And it's also in alphabetical order, but it's numerical then alphabetical. And my show was called Wordy Words, which I think is great, but it's a very last show in the whole book, right?
You don't think of that when you're putting it together.
Online is just throwing down. It's the very, very last one. So
wordy.
Well, it's 101. Wordy word.
Gosh.
So we realised that. So I then had to go into the office a couple of times and get him to change it on the app or online to a family show, and suddenly all these young people turned up, or young couples with children turned up. And what had happened there was I'd be very interactive with the children, and the parents loved it, but I'd also be interactive with the parents. But of course, I'm always positive about the child and their contribution. And why wouldn't you be? Yeah. Who wants to turn up and have their child ridiculed or made fun of and made to feel bad? So you want to be interactive and have fun with them. Yeah. And whatever they say is correct. Yeah. So I mean, this is another thing which I learned a while ago is you might not agree with that person's view, but that person is correct because based on their knowledge, understanding and experience, that is correct. It's just different from you. But you could find out about their knowledge, understanding and experience by asking a question. And the better the question, the better the answer. And then you go, oh, I didn't know that stuff. And then you get more information and you can form a better opinion yourself. So why wouldn't you be kind to a child? Why wouldn't you encourage them to speak up?
Yeah, of course.
So it's just a natural thing, I think.
Gosh,
but it is fun. And it's fun being able to make adult jokes in the room that go way over the children's head. And the parents are really laughing. And the children... You can do jokes for the children are really laughing. Yeah. So
you're capturing two at once.
And I really like that. I just don't know how to get the market because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, of course.
Because everything's very quick and snappy and it's online and that doesn't exist. And when I did the festival in Aberdeen, the Fringe there, I did win the prize for the best family show. Although I think I was the only family show. But,
still the best.
But still, woo. But people came to see me this year with the families, with the children that had been to see me last year. And that felt really good.
Yeah.
So they came back.
Yeah. They said, and it was very much, they said, oh, we like it as parents. We think it's really funny. And our children find it really funny. Yeah. So we've come back again this year. Yeah. And that is such a nice feeling. And I had that when I was at the Lemon Tree all those years ago, 35 years ago, whatever. Grandparents turned up with their children and their grandchildren. Yeah. So there was 3 generations of people in the audience from the one family who would be listening to me in the radio because at that time people listened to the radio. You either watch TV or listen to the radio and all 3 generations would turn up. Yeah. And that was a nice thing. Now, I have no idea how to unlock that or how to get connected through social media or the way things work nowadays where you get...
3 generations in one go.
Or or 2 generations or a family show because things are so... it's broken up. Yeah. But that's a real joy when that happens.
I have no doubt after listening to this podcast, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
because
Processes it
you'll figure out the process. There's no, again, because you're so insanely funny, you're so insanely kind and likable.
So insanely insane.
It's so insanely insane.
work?
That could be your next Fringe.
That could be your tagline. Yeah. Something.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it doesn't matter actually.
No,
What
you're
matters is that I keep moving it on. It's like I worked out what happened at the Fringe this time. So I was like, I've got some
Lessons
ideas of how
learned,
to
yeah.
improve it for the next one.
Yeah.
Learn before, during, and after, and I'll make a step up, and I'll do a bit better next time.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I had thought of doing 2 shows, a family show and a one for
Yeah.
over 18.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I thought I would call "Didn't I Do Your Granny?" So
I will buy that
I'd like-
T-shirt.
I think Scott G said, "Why don't you call it? I'd love to do your granny."
Oh,
I thought, I like my.
Because
I don't know, that's
D
an invite.
becomes
That's a
before
big
I
one,
in the
yeah.
program, so the D would.
Oh, yeah.
D becomes for I. Euphemism.
Yeah, I'll have to. Yes, but I like the idea of. It doesn't actually mean that you've actually done anything to the granny.
No.
But it implies that it's more of an adult.
Yeah, humor.
orientation.
For
Yeah.
sure.
But I still think, I could actually, but it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
But what matters is each time I go out, I do something a bit different, and it's another step forward for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just thank you for doing
yeah,
this.
honestly, Sid, like I could talk to you for a few more hours,
So could
easy.
I, yeah.
And yeah, like thanks for coming on and answering some of the most profound questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Because honestly, I was talking to my wife. I said, I've got Sid coming on the show. It's going to be hilarious, and it is really funny. This the turn that we've taken, and I'm so glad we've taken that turn because, again, our reach isn't huge, but eventually somebody will listen to this and go, that's sat with me. And I think some of the things you've talked about is really important.
I've definitely learned from this.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it gives you more of an insight to who I really am, and of course, I just show.
Yeah, snippets.
But all
of
that
course.
stuff's in the background working.
Yeah.
As it is when you guys are on stage.
Yeah.
You've got your stuff happening, which you bring and you say, "This is the bit I'm showing you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fun."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and everyone's got that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You so well. But anyway, that's us. We'll
Buy
wrap
tickets
it.
to Sid's show. We'll put the link on our.
Yeah. So Sid, when's your show again? Just to plug it.
It is the 27th of September.
Yeah.
It starts at 7:30. I have 3 wonderful support acts, but mostly it's me being very funny. Oh, I'm doing poetry, song, comedy, magic tricks,
Everything.
and dad dancing.
Dad dancing.
Dancing.
Right.
See, that's
Coming for the dad dancing
yeah.
alone.
That's a certain niche that is sadly forgotten, and it needs to be encouraged.
It needs to be brought back. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Get
And the,
tickets.
and the money will go to. I don't know the individual children, but it'll go to the children in Palestine, which I think is a good
Great
thing
cause,
to
yeah.
do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
perfect. We'll wrap up there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Love you.